Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of patrons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Jason Hornsby, Christoph Fournier, John Travolta, JMails24, Unamento, M, Iron26, Endless, Flat Earth Sage, Goldie McKiernan, Retro Bill, More Books, Canna Bear, Fibre Oats, Bogey, Michael Kahn, Rob H, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Melby Styles, Troy Shuker, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Dale West Watson, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, The Real Gabster, Abraham Mohammed, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, David Wayne Foster, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their conversation while I set up for today's live show.
Sorry, Nathan.
You don't have to be, it's okay.
Yeah. No, you're welcome.
Welcome.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Jolly good. It's a good start.
Yeah.
Stevie, what's up, Stevie?
Trying to stay cool, Neil.
How's everything in Discord? Back to normal?
Well, how's everything in flat Earth? Back to normal?
That'll never be back to normal.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah.
Are you righteous? You good?
Oh yeah, very good.
Discord still
Well, I'm
functioning
kind of in the
nicely?
middle of eating.
Oh, go on.
I wasn't planning on talking right away, but yeah. Why?
So
Why are you asking?
I just asked if Discord is all functioning nicely, just because I know it's not new, but it is new because when I last talked about it, it was about 3 months ago, and you said that the old Discord had been made when you weren't that clued up on what Discord did, and you've had to learn it as you've gone along, and therefore layered up stuff on top of other stuff that can't then be corrected easily. And you said, but when you started the new server, that it was like starting with a fresh slate, but with all the information that you had, so it was much quicker and easier to start it with better. I can't remember. I don't want to say layers because I can't remember how you phrased it, but I was just asking in that regard, really.
I guess you could say like code, even though that's not the proper phrasing either. But you know, the way I set the permissions and put everything together so things don't conflict, it was easier to put because it was just starting a clean slate, and I already had an idea of what the end should look like from beginning to end, right? Like the other server, Betty started it, right? So she started with her things, and then I kind of had to mix new things I was learning with her things, and I don't know how to say it. It was just like a bit cluttered, so to say, the way things are set up behind the scenes, right?
No
But
idea.
when I started fresh, it was like, oh, I can make it so much more simpler, right? And keep things so much more cleaner. So yeah.
Obviously, from my end, it looks no different and functions no different, but I know it is because you've told me.
Okay, yeah. You have faith in me, right?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. But everything's good. And I did have this server like set up from like the day one we went on Guilded. I had both options set up. I just needed to do some like final tweaking, like the day we actually did switch over. So
I really wanted to like Gilded, and we may end up using it again in the future as it improves. It's just, you know, it's like the other people who've set up alternatives to YouTube, they might offer similar features, but it's not YouTube. And in terms of Discord, obviously there's people who are unfamiliar with Discord, but there's such a high level of familiarity with just the name of it alone when you're like watching random YouTube videos and they go, oh, by the way, we've got a Discord server. So Discord server is synonymous with what we use and what Gilded was and what many alternatives may offer. But it's like making a Skype call. You know what I mean?
Right. It's what's the word you use? Like familiar or something like that. You use that word, and that's exactly it. Like I remember Jaron and everybody, they were like, "Oh, join us on this other platform," and I'm just like, "No way." You know what I mean? I took a peek and everything, and I'm like,
Yeah.
not everybody is there. You want to be where everybody is, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we're leaving this commercial TV station in favour of this public broadcast network. Oh, really? I'll just stick to watching the terrestrial telly, is what most people would say in that scenario, right?
Right.
No, I won't necessarily follow you to your second-rate broadcast platform because I don't want to, because I can just look it up on YouTube and it comes up in a Google search, even if I'm not necessarily searching for a video. Just, here's the answer to your question in video format on YouTube.
Right. Right. So if we feel like this, it's only natural to expect others to feel like that, right?
Absolutely.
Hey, Nathan,
Hello.
have you got any new subscribers yet or no?
What do you mean? The channel is continually growing, Neil. So did I have less subscribers? I'm nearly done with my answer. Obviously, I'm only allowed 3 or 4 words. Jesus, what?
I know it's growing. I'm talking about a big hit. Have you noticed a big hit?
No. It's growing at the usual steady rate that it always grows at, with the occasional dip when someone slags me off like Jaron did. Then it dips temporarily. And then I do smick about it because I pay close attention to my stats. In this case, we've done reactionary videos, which has upped the numbers back to where they were before. As for the subscriptions, they've increased. They've always been increasing, and they've never stopped increasing. So there's more subscribers today than there was yesterday. That's just a fact.
Yeah, I'm looking for the big hit.
From what? Is there something you know I don't?
I know that we keep doing these videos and we're going to get a big hit somewhere.
Okay, if you say so.
Listen, you're breaking these videos down and coming with truth that people have not heard. A lot of people have not heard the Black Swan. Okay? And when you're breaking it down in these videos, I'm telling you, word's going to get around.
Maybe, I hope so. But I tend to not work on the basis that I can do anything beyond what I can see in the statistics. So if I can generate X amount of growth, I can say that that amount of work that I put in will generate that amount of growth. And consistently, that's been the case. You put in a bit more work, you get a few more views, your subscriber count grows a little bit quicker, you do a bit less work, you get a few less views, etc., etc. Right? So I'm never on the idea that there's loads of sort of, you could be good at YouTube channels out there, right? And they're all sort of gearing you towards getting that one thing that gets you promoted. But it's just pure luck, as far as I can see. Algorithmically, you might be able to fathom what YouTube are doing, but really you don't know what it is that makes one particular video go viral. And I remember watching a guy, again, I've got no interest in this particular subject, but a guy talking about Lego versus fake Lego. And he just went into some particular niche subject about it, and I watched it. And then, no, that wasn't right. What he actually made a video about was his YouTube revenue, right? This Lego guy. And he made a subject about his YouTube channel and how much revenue it had made. And that particular video, totally unrelated to his subject, went viral. And therefore I watched a couple of his Lego videos, which I didn't find very interesting. I'm not a teenager or a kid anymore. But, because they were presented to me, I watched them. But one of his videos, he was lucky enough to generate an absolute shed ton of revenue from, because he was just discussing how his YouTube stats worked with money, which most people shy away from. Anyway, the point is that for him, He didn't know when he made that video about revenue on YouTube that it would be something that would spark his channel into getting a lot more views about Lego. But that's what happened to him. Lucky old him. Now, it might be the case that I make a video about a graphics card, the fans, or something that I'm doing at the time, an amplifier repair, or a new preamp, or whatever it is that's generally something that I make as a side video that might go viral, if I'm lucky, and then bring a whole load of people, tertiary people, to Flat Earth that watch like I watch Lego videos once or twice and then lost interest completely. So even in those circumstances, yeah, you're going to grow, and yeah, you're going to retain some of that audience because they are genuinely interested in the side subject that they've come to your channel via some other video that happened to go viral. But I never want to bank on that. I never want to think that's what I'm aiming to do. It's just look at it. I always look at it from the same perspective as I did in a sales job. Is what work can I do directly, proactively, off my own back to generate more business, to generate more sales, to get more people to buy the product? Well, that's the same exact thing that you have to apply to YouTube. What can I do to get more people to buy my video, which means clicking on it? That's all I'm interested in. Well, if you always apply that mentality, you'll see the general growth it yields. And yeah, you can hope for the best and hope that somebody's going to go viral, but I don't work on that mentality. You just go nuts when it never happened. It's like trying to win the lottery.
Right, just keep plugging in. But I remember this millionaire guy. He said everybody's one meeting away from success. And I think that's true.
Yeah. I mean, you can extend that out to the 6 degrees of separation and say you're only 6 people away from knowing the Sultan of Brunei or something and being able to ask him for a couple of million because he likes your endeavour. Well, yeah, okay. That might be true also. But statistically, most people aren't going to get to have that meeting. Yeah, you might be one meeting away from your specific talent being in front of the specific person that can provide you money to do that specific task for a greater degree of money than you are currently doing it. Yeah, I don't doubt it. There's probably 150 million people out there that could do that for me, that are in a better position to promote what I do. But unless you're actually in front of them, or getting in front of them, or somehow finding out who they are to get in front of them, what difference does it make that you're one meeting away? You could spend your entire life one meeting away going nuts. Well, when am I going to get that next meeting? About have 5,000 more meetings then. And none of them turn out to be that one meeting that you needed. You know what I mean, Neil?
Yeah, but you're not looking for the meeting. It just happens.
I
like
know.
Me, I do
get that.
contracting. I could be a handshake away from doing work for a guy that has a ton of freaking buildings that I'm going to be responsible for.
Yes, that's true.
You look great, but you never know.
There's 2 sayings that spring to mind. One is you miss 100% of the opportunities you don't take. Okay? That's one saying. The other is one that came from a show we have in England called Only Fools and Horses. And in Only Fools and Horses, the main character, Dell, says this particular saying quite often. It's not like a catchphrase, but it does say it reasonably frequently throughout the show's history, which is, this time next year, we'll be millionaires. Bearing in mind, he's a market trader. Yeah, he's only one deal away from being a millionaire. That's his shtick, right? And the whole point of the show is to show that in spite of his optimism that he's going to be a millionaire next year, he's always working on the market. He's always wheeling and dealing and doing the next thing. By the same token, he's surviving, right? He still can buy a pint for his friends at the pub. He's still having a reasonably good laugh a lot of the time. So you go, okay, so life ain't so bad. But it is if you focus in the optimistic light that you're always going to think, next year I'll be a millionaire. If I just keep doing this, I'm one meeting away from being a millionaire. I haven't got those sorts of lofty aspirations, if I'm honest, Neil. I've worked in an industry where I got paid extremely well and got to travel all over the world and flying, doing that sort of stuff. I felt like James Bond at the time. No, I had no time for my family. No, I had no time at home. I was just all over the place in hotels doing the job, earning good money, which is nice. And you get to drive back from the airport in a really nice new car and all those sorts of things. And you get to buy your nice expensive coffee machine and nice new bits of kit. But you're time poor. So, having a lot of money isn't necessarily the best thing in the world because you've got such limited time to actually do things with the money that you're earning. So obviously it's about striking a balance. Now, in more recent times, well, since doing YouTube more specifically, I had to choose the opposite end of the extreme, which is very little money, but lots and lots of time. So you can say, right, well, I've got all this time to invest in doing YouTube stuff, so I'll do that. And still have a bit of time left over to do family things and enjoy life, generally speaking. But you're poor, so you can't go out much. You can't go out and have meals or drinks and things that the market trader's actually doing better than I am in that regard, or was. Now I'm on probably the same level as the market trader. You know what I mean? I can just about afford
but now you're going to have that great success doing YouTube. I feel it in my bones, Nathan.
Yeah, but I don't want to bank on that, especially with my wife listening in the background. You're not listening to this, are you, Paula?
Would you tell this guy what he's going to hit?
Say again, Neil. Sorry, I was having a cross conversation with my wife, making sure she's not listening to you telling her that this time next year we'll be millionaires, when that's not the mentality I have.
I didn't say anything about money. I said an influx of new subscribers, because this topic is everything right now. People don't know. Man, take over. I'm driving.
All right, Neil, just let go of the subject. How's that?
Yeah, just let it go. Just do what you're doing.
No,
More importantly than anything, enjoy life. You know, the thing that saddens me sometimes about this show is that, regardless of which side of the fence, mostly anti-flat earthers, I've got to be honest about this, it is, right? This is affecting them in a very detrimental way, a very negative way. And we've got a finite amount of time here. So spending year after year after year in an endeavour that you enjoy, that's me on this side of the fence with a whole load of wonderment attached to the subject, that's glorious. But for your guy who's fighting against it, and literally, in the case of Fight the Flat Earth, literally tying his channel, the fact that he's fighting against this, it's like, do you want to spend a good chunk of your adult life in a fight for a paradigm? That to me is something that's going to affect your life very negatively. And when you get to the end of your days and look back, yeah, I spent a lot of my time telling flat earthers that they were stupid. Really? That sounds really good. How much of that did you take as rewarding? And the answer is probably very little.
Nathan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, my signal seems to be jumping, but I think what you did with Professor Dave, and hopefully you'll be able to finish with part 2 and 3 today or tomorrow, however long it takes, you're hitting them where it counts, because obviously, unless they're being side funded, they're making their money from their YouTube channel and their views. So if you're going to take on the adversary to our point, the way we've been doing it, then a bunch of his listeners, or a bunch of people in the middle who have been affected by these individuals with these anti-flat earth channels, they're going to be listening how you take them down with the housekeeping questions. And that's going to affect those subscribers.
Okay,
That's what I said, Ted.
Okay, let's do this. We've got Destroying Flat Earth Without Using Science - Part 2: the SARS. Should we do it?
So there's been a resurgence of interest in my channel among flat earthers lately. First, there's this intellectual powerhouse.
And welcome back to Flat Earth, another.
I don't know about debate, but certainly true. I cannot deny it. We've shown a new interest in your channel. Moreover, reactively, so to speak, 10th Man has shared lots of your videos with me so we can take you apart in order to build popularity of this channel. So I'm literally using you just to gain audience, Dave. I hope you feel used, because you are being.
Potatoes.
Who tried to debunk my 10 things that all flat earthers say by repeating.
He tried to debunk your stereotype fallacy video about what all flat earthers say. No, I think we proved in part 1 that a lot of the misapprehensions you've got about what all flat earthers say, they don't all say. Most of what you claimed flat earthers say, I don't, and pointed that out in the last video, didn't we?
The 10 things that all flat earthers say.
All of them. No, that's a stereotyping fallacy. Are we not allowed in this video to point out your fallacies either? I'm pretty sure we're going to, though, because you're using them. This is a stereotyping fallacy. Yeah? Now, I could use a very crass and crude example and stereotype you with all of your idiotic brethren. I won't, but I could.
Great work, Slick.
Okie dokie. Now we're into the actual what he's claiming. Response to Globebusters, the Earth still isn't flat. Presumably this is one of his videos.
Then, the Globe Busters, no doubt still upset about my video that exposed their unparalleled stupidity to millions.
Is he going to example this unparalleled stupidity, we ask ourselves? Good chance, probably not. Hey John, just going through part 2 of Professor Dave Explains YouTube channels Destroying Flat Earth Without Using Science, part 2, the stars video. How are you doing?
All right. That sounds interesting.
Of people, which continues to get between 10 and 20,000 views per day, are...
Wow, so when you say that you've debunked somebody, what you're appealing to is how many views it's had. I'm pretty sure that's an appeal to consensus fallacy, am I wrong? This video about unicorns being true has had 20 million views, therefore it's correct. And it doesn't work like that.
Are publishing feature-length responses made by some nitwit to my 10 challenges, which literally do not respond to the challenges.
Oh, you'll get a load of us, my friend. Yeah, we'll definitely be responding. And I have responded to his challenge video from memory. I do remember doing something similar several years ago, history repeating itself, so to speak. I vaguely remember me pointing out all the logical fallacies in his video, so maybe that's why he actually specifically mentioned it. I'm not going to take credit. Maybe there's other flat earthers out on the circuit that specifically highlight the fallacies used by Globe using, proponents like this guy. But maybe not. I don't know. Maybe that's why he had to have a disclaimer that you can't pull apart fallacy. Didn't see a response video, though, so can't claim that's true.
I ask for a map. 90 minutes later, I kid you.
You asked for a map. In the last episode, we pointed out that the maps and models you held up as a straw man stereotyping fallacy were all developed from a flat plane in the first instance. In the case of the spherical projection of the azimuthal north-centric projection that you used, that's also a globe projection that's come from a flat Earth derivation in terms of the equatorial plane, the celestial sphere model, all of which has been derived from elevation angle measurements to the stars, which is what this video is about, right? So, therefore, you haven't got a map. Your maps are all derived from a flat Earth model, the celestial sphere model. You know, you talked about your latitude lines. I doubt you'll have looked it up.
Do not. No map. So, with the...
Yeah, you're the one without a map, my friend. All of your maps came from a flat terrain. The measurements to the stars were angle measurements. You couldn't have done those on a curved surface. Further to that, your assumption of a sphere was an Alberuni assumption that also, when measuring R, took an elevation angle measurement to the top of the mountain off a flat plane. So everything about the sphere uses a flat Earth. Same response as the last video.
Dwindling flat earth cult, now a pathetic parody of itself, I'm just going to make a few more videos demonstrating how easy it is to destroy flat earth without using any science at all.
You've never used any science, you've never debunked flat earth, and as for you claiming how easy it is to debunk this stuff, yeah, obviously we've not had this in front of us until now. Had you have had our responses in advance, you wouldn't be making this stupid nonsense, because you're going to be demonstrated stupid by us over the next few minutes, especially as you're using stars. Well, stars are used in navigation off a flat plane. That's how it's done.
Last time we looked at the moon, so today let's look at the stars.
Okie dokie.
Flat earthers love to complain about how dumb it is to look up at the sky to...
Has any of you on the panel ever complained about how dumb it is to look up at the sky? Just so we can clarify, this is definitely a stereotyping fallacy.
Never.
I love looking up at the stars. Wonderful. I used to own a telescope, not anymore, got kids. But no, I don't think it's dumb at all.
I don't think it's smart to look at the stars to say that we're living on a flat Earth until the elevation angle argument. Now I think it's wise.
It's not that it's got on screen. Why would you look up at the sky to determine the shape of the Earth? No, you don't understand. When navigating the Earth, it is a prerequisite that it's flat. You can't have angle measurements unless it's flat. So it's not that we're determining the shape of the Earth with the sky. It's already been determined, and that's how the maps have been developed. They were using elevation angle measurements to the stars. More specifically, Polaris, when you're talking about the equatorial plane, which can have a Haversine formula applied to it to turn it into a globe. That's how it's done. But that's how the world's actually utilised as a flat plane. So it's not like we're going to go, well, let's look at the stars to determine how it's all mapped and modelled and navigated. That's how it's navigated. That's how it's been measured already, and that's how the maps were developed. So why are you harking on about what flat earthers that aren't us with a stereotyping fallacy would declare when that's how the world works? Elevation angle measurements, look them up. Go on, whoever that was. Was that somebody? No? Okay.
To determine the shape of the Earth, but that's only because doing so specifically proves that it's a sphere.
Does it? What about elevation angle measurements? Doesn't prove you're on a sphere. It can't prove you're on a sphere. When you're doing anything practical like navigating, you're measuring a flat plane. So this is total nonsense. Is he going to back this? Let's see what he actually claims to back it.
And it's one of the ways we figured out that it's a sphere thousands of years ago.
Oh, figured out. Like last time, baseless assertion fallacy about divining the thoughts of thousands of years ago, the minds of their people and what they were figuring. Figuring, that's maths, that's measuring. Well, no, it doesn't matter whether it's 1,000 years ago or not, right? The way that you take angles to the stars, that's how it's done. Who cares? Thousands of years ago, my ass. What's your example of what they actually did to figure it out 1,000 years ago? Let's see if this rolls into an example or a baseless assertion fallacy as declared already.
For example, if you're at a northerly latitude,
latitude? Did we cover this in the last one? This is a flat Earth requirement, right? Where do you think you get these lines from? Check out the equatorial plane. Yeah? How do you think it's been derived? Talking about taking elevation angle measurements to Polaris, right? That's where you're getting these lines from. These are flat Earth lines, Dumbo. And further to that, this is a flat map. Look how flat it is. This isn't sphere-shaped. You stupid clown. So you've put a flat map on the screen. You're starting to ask how the world works. Why is this map flat? Why aren't you using anything spherical? We've had 2 videos and not a single spherical map's been presented so far. Well, so you're going to turn around and say, they're global projections. Yeah, that came from elevation angle measurements to Polaris. It was converted into a globe for you to project it back onto a flat map so it'll actually work with elevation angle measurements, only so that you can say it's a global projection. Yeah, well, we'll point out that that global projection by way of Haversine formula conversion came from a flat plane. It couldn't not have. It's done with elevation angle measurements.
Facing northwards and you watch the stars for a while, you will notice that they appear to rotate counterclockwise around.
Counterclockwise? What about if I turn around? Are they still counterclockwise if I turn 180 degrees? Yeah? Counterclockwise and clockwise are relative directions. My God! Professor Dave is literally retarded. Like, literally dumb as shit. These are relative directions. If I stand on the edge of a roundabout and watch the cars go by and go, check it out, they're going counterclockwise, right? And then I cross over the road and turn around and look at the cars, are they still going counterclockwise? They've changed direction relative to my viewing them. So what the hell are you talking about? If I've got a transparent clock and I look at it from one side, I can say that the hands are going clockwise. If I go on the other side of the transparent clock, are they still going clockwise from my position? No! It's relative to how you view it. You've just got to turn around. Idiot. Now, there is a problem with this claimed to be proofsy of a globe. That is that, without exception, all of the stars rise in the east and set in the west. All of them. North and south hemisphere. Without exception. Save for Polaris, which doesn't move its relative position. But they're all doing the same thing.
Around a point in the sky. This point is roughly aligned with the star Polaris, which we call the North Star. If you were to then...
Why is it called the North Star? Sounds like it's got something to do with mapping. I wonder. Yeah, you're going to need a flat plane for that.
Travel south for a while, you would see that certain stars are no longer...
Yeah, that's the equatorial plane that you're describing. This is where you've got your latitude and longitude lines from. Okay, well, your description has come from elevation angle measurements taken from a flat plane to Polaris, right? The equatorial plane, the outside edge of what you call your globe, really just the outside parameters of where you can see Polaris from. That's all it is.
Viewable, and at the equator, all the stars move directly east to west through the sky. Then, heading towards the southerly latitudes and facing south, you will see a whole new batch of stars you couldn't see in the north, and they...
Okay, let's point out his begging the question fallacy. So what he's done is he said, in the southern hemisphere. Why is it that you're assuming that we're on the bottom of a sphere or on the top of a sphere? Why is it that the ground measured to give you these lines off a flat plane to Polaris at the equatorial plane extremities? Why is that flat plane used to describe the lines on your map now being described as though it's a spherical surface? Southern hemisphere? Oh no, that's a begging the question fallacy. Maps aren't working that way. The one you just showed certainly wasn't. Go ahead.
Hey Nathan, hey everyone. Yeah, he's talking nonsense. It's like when you go past the equator, you see a whole new set of stars. You don't just start seeing stars that are past what will be the equator line before you ever reach the equator line. You get to the equator line then and you can see stars that are north of the equator line and south of the equator line. And then you go south of the equator line and you can still see stars north of the equator line until you go far enough away, which would be to a point you can't even go to because you can't go past the 60th parallel without meeting some kind of military or political resistance. This total nonsense. Does he think that when you just go past the equator, suddenly all the stars from the north can't be seen and you can see all the stars in the south? Like the guy is a bonehead.
This is my son's argument, so I'm glad that it's being dealt with here.
It's just a begging the question. All it is begging the question. So if I assume that when I travel from the north to the south, I am antipodal from my position where I began, because I say the south is a hemisphere. All right, what makes you think that the claim that you're demonstrating in any way proves hemispherical surfaces to the ground? Oh, you're just assuming it by way of saying southern hemisphere? That's a begging the question fallacy, Dave. Like assuming your outcome?
What?
You're trying to prove the Earth's a sphere? Just saying it's a sphere by way of hemisphere just begs the question. Go ahead, John.
Sorry,
Well, the hemisphere antipodal assertion requires a flat plane in the celestial sphere model. So he'll still need a flat plane for him to assert a southern hemisphere and a northern hemisphere.
Yeah, if he asserts it in without using the Haversine formula conversion to a globe to claim that he's got a global projection when he shows a flat map, then he'll just use the celestial sphere model, in which case you've got two flat Earths sandwiched upside down antipodal from one another. That's still two flat planes. It's not a sphere. Hemisphere is his hemispherical assumption for him in the north, followed by a hemispherical assumption for him in the south. Why? Why are we assuming that we're antipodal when we travelled in a southward direction? I travelled towards the horizon in a south direction. At no point does it ever suggest that I'm moving antipodal from where I began. Unless you beg the question, Dave.
They will again be rotating around a point in the sky, though this time clockwise.
What? Clockwise this time? All the stars, save for Polaris, rise in the east and set in the west. Without exception, they all move in the same direction, Dave. They do not change direction in the southern begging the question hemisphere. They move in the same direction. You've just turned around, you complete bonehead. Wow, you're thick.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great fun. You are really stupid, Professor Dave explains. You don't understand relative direction changes. They're all moving in the same direction, you stupid idiot. Anyone else want to call Dave a stupid idiot?
Yeah.
Be my guest.
I do. Yeah, I do. When I stand out my back garden and I look directly north, the stars are all coming from my right and going to my left. When I do the same in Sydney, Australia, where I used to live, and I look north, the stars are coming from my right and going to my left. There's absolutely no difference whatsoever. Professor Dave is a bonehead.
What a thicko. Clearly you've never been to the south. Otherwise you might have observed this. Me and Brian here have definitely been and observed the same thing because we're interested in looking up at the sky and observing what it does. So we've both done this. We've observed what the stars do in the south. You are going to tell an audience they go in the opposite direction? Ooh, what? You need locking up. You know, mental asylum styley. Thick. Like, genuinely retarded. Have all of your audience pointed this out? Like, they're all really, really clever, I'm assuming, right? They're all really smart and are pointing out to you how dumb this is when they all travel in the same bloody direction? Not going in the opposite direction, you stupid clown.
instead of counterclockwise. So
Instead of? No, they're going the same direction, you stupid buffoon. Like, this stupid puzzled face is you. As I point out, they're all moving in the same direction. There's only one exception, and it's Polaris. Same direction, stupid idiot!
So how do we make sense of these observations?
You haven't made sense of them, you clown. You've got them wrong. Like, you should be deleting this video. It's got a massive error in it, you stupid clown.
Do they work on a flat Earth?
This is an azimuthal equidistant projection, North Pole centric, of a globe projection that has been converted by way of Haversine formula from the celestial sphere model, which is a flat plane. That's what this is. It's also not a globe, and we haven't seen any globe maps in any of these two videos thus far. What we have seen are maps that can, as they stand on screen, work with elevation angle measurements. Now with this one, it has to work north-centric from the outside in or inside out. That's just how the map's designed. But it doesn't make any difference. It still functions, and it only functions with flat Earth angles. So this one is a functional map because you can use it with angles, elevation angles. No globe map will ever do that. That's why they're all flat.
The AE map, or Gleason's map, is actually based around the latitude and longitude grid, which is derived from flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris. And the distances between the rings of latitude had to be matched. They had to find out what 1 degree of angular distance would be using the celestial bodies would be in conversion as a conversion to whichever standard measurement they were using for distance at the time. Now today we use statute miles, so we have nautical miles to statute miles. That's a horizontal relationship. The two of them have to be matched horizontally. So all the longitude lines are all horizontal. Regardless of what people think when they look at one of those maps and they look at places in the south and they see Australia all stretched. Australia is only all stretched on that because they're trying to match their latitude and longitude positions to the Australia they have on a globe. But in reality, those latitude and longitude positions aren't actually correct. But because anything south of the equator is made up.
But we're debunking. What we're debunking is a globe projection. I mean, this globe projection's had to be flattened out so it's in any way useful. But this is definitely a globe projection, Dave. So you're saying this map that you said was a flat earther's map because you're holding it up as a stereotyping strawman fallacy. Maybe you were unaware. This is a globe projection. So you're saying how badly your globe projection fails. I mean, meanwhile, your globe projection was derived from a flat Earth, the celestial sphere model. It was converted by way of a Haversine formula. Well, that conversion means that this origin is a flat Earth. So even though you've got a step in between that you can call it globe, which I could strawman you with and say, well, this is a globe projection that's failing then. But it's not my map. I haven't developed. I'm not a cartographer. Why are you holding this strawman up? Just shows what a complete farce converting the celestial sphere model by way of Haversine to a globe to then project it out on a cylinder and then roll it out flat in the case of the Mercator projection is. It's just stupid going through all those steps. They're only done so you can call it a globe projection. Should we ever point out how this map works, after begging your question that you force upon us, which is that this is a reification fallacy we hold true, then if it's shown to be true or working in any way, you'll say, well, it's a globe projection. What, from a flat model? By way of Haversine? So who cares? This isn't an argument that needs arguing about. There's millions and millions of maps, all of which are flat, because they have to be to work with elevation angle measurements. None of them are globe-shaped. So this is a complete farce from Dave. Again, yet to see a globe model. Certainly not one that's going to be used for a mapping.
Not even a little bit. That the sky would be doing different things for different people just...
The reification fallacy, you've misunderstood what this is. It's a map. It's got a purpose. Why are you sticking little coloured men on it and describing what they would do? This is farcical. Again, a stereotyping strawman fallacy being rolled out by Dave about what a model that's a globe projection that's come from a flat plane does if you assume that this is actually the world we're living in. That's a reification fallacy you're also forcing on us with a stereotyping fallacy, Dave. I mean, it's sad.
Just because they are standing closer or further from...
They're not standing anywhere. They're not doing anything. This is a reification fallacy. Show me the men in these places doing this thing. If you can't, this is a reification fallacy. They're not doing that. They're little men on a reification fallacy you're now committing.
The center of a disc is total nonsense.
Yeah, it's because it's a reification fallacy you're employing. We're not employing it. I am a flat earther. I do not reify this into my world. You're the one guilty of this reification, Dave, not me. Now, because it's not me as an individual, no, not me as a flat earther, annihilating your stereotyping fallacy.
That's why flat earthers avoid...
I'm a flat earther. I'm not avoiding anything. I'm attacking it head on based on its use of a flat earth celestial sphere model, conversion to a globe, and then a conversion to a slightly useful flat globe projection that's definitely not sphere shaped, and you haven't presented one.
This subject altogether unless they have the balls to invent idiotic sorcery like personal domes and other...
Personal domes? What are you babbling about? Personal domes being the representative of perspective that we used specifically with Polaris. Yeah, that perspective representation as you back away from it that gives you the circles and lines on your maps. That personal dome. You need to do some research about how the map was developed before you start slagging off personal domes. What do you think the celestial sphere model is?
Yeah, what does he think celestial navigation refer to when they refer to personal domes? For God knows how long. Yes, celestial navigation is no good, Dave.
Yeah, Dave's literally...
They refer to him as well.
He's flying in the face of world navigation. I mean, do you realise how stupid you are, Dave, by saying this? Idiotic is what you are.
Other fantasies that are not even worth deconstructing.
Fantasies? No, lack of research, mate. It's called celestial navigation. It's not a fantasy. It's a way of not dying. If you're lost, are you having a laugh?
You know,
Furthermore,
sorry.
why can't...
Go on.
I was just going to say, you know what it is? I watched. I wasn't on the show the other day, but I watched it afterwards, and this is the same. What it is they take the AE map. Dave takes it, right? And as usual, with the rest of them, they want to talk about everything south of the equator, because everything north of the equator with the latitude, longitude grid, everything works perfect. But south of the equator, they have had to stretch things out and mess around with things for them to fit on the globe when they bring the latitude and longitude, or the longitude lines back in together and wrap it around the globe, right? But the only reason that anything works north of the equator is because the whole thing is constructed off a flat plane with flat plane measurements to Polaris. That's where it all comes from. So everything south of the equator is made up. He wants us to argue about they are made up south of the equator. Why would we do that? And on top of that, what will happen is when he goes to show you some globe stuff, he'll have top-notch CGI. As opposed when it comes to anything flat Earth, they'll have some silly blue and green on red men standing on some silly AE map.
Yeah, he's told you you're not allowed to attack his CGI. Doesn't matter which side. If his crappy CGI doesn't take your fancy from the flat Earth side, or his super duper CGI from the globe Earth side, apparently just calling out the fact that it's CGI as opposed to an actual demonstration of his claim with a photograph isn't allowed, according to Professor Dave explains. I'm not even kidding.
Can't people towards the outer edge see the same stars as people towards the center?
What, sort of like the basis of their measurements of Polaris to give you these lines? That's how it's done, you stupid clown. I mean, you really are thick, Dave.
And vice versa. What's blocking the light? Again, no explanation.
What's blocking what light? What are you talking about? You know how perspective works. Things drop towards the horizon as you back away from them. Blocking them? What are you talking about? What, when you make your antipodal assumption of hemispheres? No, we've already debunked that begging the question fallacy. Go on, whoever that was.
Oh, yeah, there is an explanation. It's called angular measurement. Perspective,
yeah,
as you just said. You said it as I was about to say. Yeah, that's the explanation. That's what they say in celestial navigation. Angular measurement is a measurement of perspective. It measures. It's a way of representing perspective. You know, as a measurement. That's what it is.
That's done. That's how the maps work. It's like he's
Yeah.
debunking how the maps work while he simultaneously
Yeah.
appeals to latitude and longitude lines. Like, are you thick?
Yeah.
Now, what would happen on a sphere that is
Sphere? What, like a sphere Earth that you're assuming with this glorious CGI image that isn't the world that we stand on? Why are we suddenly cutting to really high quality CGI images of a globe? Why haven't we got these photographs? Oh, that's because this, if it was capable of being photographed, would be being photographed from a second law of thermodynamics violation sky vacuum. And the gas, which is sort of like represented by this little hue in the CGI. Can you see that nice little beautiful hue? Yeah, this is a 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum. And you know what happens when you introduce any gas to a vacuum? It immediately expands in all directions to fill the availability of volume that it's got. It's called the second law of thermodynamics, dispersion. It's an entropic effect. It's a law of nature. Gas fills space. Ergo, what's this area of volume next to the globe Earth not taking in terms of photographs, but in this CGI? What's going on with the gas? There's no containment around the gas. So we'd all be dead. Instantaneously, every single gas that's ever existed on this surface would immediately vacate into the space around it. And what do you know? They call the space around it space. So space for gas to fill, like in line with entropic law. Yeah, that's why we're not living on a sphere in a vacuum. Because we'd all be dead. Without the containment, there can be no pressure. Hey, Adam.
Hi, Nathan. Hi, guys.
Showtime.
Hey, Nathan. Hey, Adam. Sorry.
I was going to say, hello again, Brian. Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are joined by Refracted Curvature, Adam Meakin, Righteous Force, Brian's Logic, Neil, 10th Man, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning.
Yo, 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 yo.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, good afternoon.
Hey.
Wow, that's
Afternoon, everyone.
super enthusiastic. Very pleased to hear it. Let's do a bit of housekeeping. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge, that's like a hill getting in the way, formerly known as Earth curvature?
Nope.
Any evidence that we can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container for the gas to press upon?
Gas pressure.
Without
a
the container, can have no pressure.
Go on, Owen, what were you going to say?
That's just that gas pressure without a container, but if we would like to test that, then the only way we could is by using a container in order to create a vacuum to try and then within it try to establish some kind of a gas pressure.
Correct.
But you'll need a container to try that.
Yeah, it works both ways. You can't have a vacuum without a container either.
Right, so
ever-
you can't even test it no matter what.
Well, you require a container regardless. That's a fact. You can, but it doesn't answer the question in terms of the violation of natural law that is Earth in space. The gas we breathe would fill the space if the sky was a vacuum. Can you demonstrate that without containment? No, is what you're saying. Well, you need to have a container to be able to demonstrate that. How the world works.
An argument for containment.
Right, it's a paradox. How
It's not a paradox. You just need a container.
can you
It's not a paradox. It's an antecedent consequent relationship.
Yeah, but
Right, it'd be like saying
it
you
is.
can't have. It would be like saying that you can have steak without a cow as a claim, and then you could say to somebody, "Well, how do you get steak without the cow?" They could claim paradox, but that wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah, they'd say, well, you've got to have a cow to get the steak, but I'm going to say you don't need cow for filet mignon. And when you point out that I do, I'll say it's a paradox. No, you just need to have that cow if you're going to be eating filet mignon. But if you're not eating filet mignon and you make the claim that you don't need to have a cow, hypothetically speaking, and then claim that it's a paradox when you've got one sat on your plate, it's nonsense. Likewise, if you say, well, I'm going to need a container to demonstrate gas pressure without a container, it's like, yeah, that's because it's an antecedent consequent relationship that's violated by the way that they claim the Earth works in space.
Right, but it is. I was trying to reference paradox, just like you need the R for terrestrial refraction, right? You can't have it. So you're going to need a container in order to demonstrate that it could be possible to have gas pressure without a container, but then that automatically defeats itself. So that is the paradox about it.
You're going to need a cow for that.
No, not at all. With refraction, it's refracting a geometric position to a non-geometric refracted position using an R value that's based on a geometric measurement. Ergo, you can't acquire the geometric measurement if the measurable thing you're looking at, the horizon, isn't in a geometric location to give you the R to refract it with. That is a paradox in their model. It's not a paradox, it's just paradoxical in their nonsense model, i.e. a contradiction. You can't have R to refract the horizon with R if you can't measure R with the horizon.
Right. Well, in the exact same sense, the thing counts in their model. If they try to demonstrate gas pressure without a container using a container, well, it's the same effect.
Okay, so you're saying...
Yeah, in itself, it's not a paradox, but it is a similar type of paradox for their model when they try that.
In trying to answer the question, they might leave themselves in a paradox within their model. I'll accept that, fine.
Exactly. That was my point.
Hello?
Humble?
Hey, Humble.
I've just got a question then in this context, hopefully. Is Brian on?
Yeah, Brian's on. Go ahead.
Brian Logic?
Yeah.
Okay. He made a video about the sun that I had to go back to because of something else I was watching. And at the end of it, as he was reading on, I got the impression that he was saying that it wasn't a complete vacuum. He used another word to describe the vacuum, but it was underneath. Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
What you're talking about is a low-grade vacuum, which is there. Yeah, low-grade vacuum up high. We do have a low-grade vacuum. Yeah, that's correct. What else was your question?
Sorry,
question?
I don't know why I was shocked at the end of this presentation to find a vacuum next to air pressure. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, I'll explain it for you. See, the vacuum is created by the sun because if you go through the rest of the video, now I know more about that topic than I did when I made that video or that presentation. The vacuum is created via the sun. because at 10 miles up, it's minus 51 degrees, right? But then the temperature starts to rise. The official claim for this is that it's the ozone layer. But there is no ozone layer because there's so little ozone, because its highest concentration of ozone is at 22 miles up. Now, ozone is technically more dense than the general air, but it doesn't come down because there's a rising in temperature after 10 miles. But the problem is this: most of our air, right, which is the majority of it, is oxygen and nitrogen, is constantly recycling with the earth every day. So that's 99% of our air supply is recycling every day with the earth. And then there's other cycles like the hydrological cycle and the carbon cycle and whatever else that are also recycling with the earth all the time. So because of the temperature gradient, it makes it impossible for any amount of gases to make it past 10 degrees or 10 miles up. But there is gases that make it past there. Now, I'm not going to go too long because it could be 10 minutes explaining this. But the gases that do make it past there, well, it's just that I'm getting to it. The gases that do make it past there, right, they are mostly, the gases that do make it past there is mostly, there's bromine and different ones. But the reason there's so little up there and there's such a gradient after 10 miles still, even though there's a rising in temperature, is because there is such a bigger space. So if you think 75% of all our air is below cloud level, now that's not 10 miles up, it's below cloud level. So when you go to 10 miles up, there's even a very low air pressure there, and that's minus 51 degrees. But the temperature starts to rise after that. But you must remember, between 10 miles up and 20 miles up, the temperature is still very low. So you're not going to have a whole lot of gas movement. And there's only a small amount of gas between 10 miles up and whatever 30, 36, whatever miles up it has to go. Because there's no measurement after that point. I don't even think there's a measurement up to 36 miles. I'm just saying 36 as a throw out there. I only know of measurements that went to 30, whatever, 30 something miles with high altitude balloons. So what happens is that there's radiative heat that happens, and that keeps the ozone, right? This is official. The ozone doesn't come down because of the rising in heat. It causes the ozone to start to become less dense and rise. But there's only a tiny, tiny amount of ozone because there's a very, very small, at 22 miles up, there's a very, very small amount of gas per meter cubed. So what you end up with is up high, right? Even though the temperature has risen, you end up with a low-grade vacuum up at 24 to 30 whatever miles. You end up with a low-grade vacuum to 10 to the minus 2, 10 to the minus 3 torr. So yeah, the vacuum is there, but the vacuum is only possible due to, number one, containment, and number two, the sun, which creates the whole thing. You can't have temperature, you can't have gas pressure, you can't have vacuum without a container. And as Arwen was just pointing out, there is no way to test whether it's possible to have without any of these things without having a container. So it's impossible to ever claim that you can have that gas pressure, temperature, or vacuum without a container, because to ever show any of these things, you need a container.
Right.
So you can't create,
In order to demonstrate, you have to find an exit to the container first.
Yeah, you can't. How do you not have a? You can't. The low grade, you can't have a vacuum without containment. If you research, I just give an example, something you can easily research. Hydrogen fusion reactor. Hydrogen fusion reactor. It's completely sealed. They evacuate the chamber. They insert a high density of hydrogen, and they heat the hydrogen to the point where it becomes plasma. But they can't hold the plasma with any solid container because it's too hot. So they use a toroidal field at the base of the container because plasma has electromagnetic properties or is attracted to a toroidal field. And so they hold the plasma in place with the toroidal field, which creates a vacuum in the rest of the chamber. Now, how do you have the gas pressure, which is the high density of hydrogen, the temperature that they need to create or the vacuum to be there without that container. You can't. It's all created, but it's all created within the container, and our sky or our air or temperature and the low grade vacuum or pi, that's all created via the sun. The sun creates all that. That's the reason it is. And the radiative heat is, I predict, is the sun creating radiative heat off of the containment.
That's
you
merely your
Okay,
speculation. Hold on. You don't know what the sun is.
I'm sorry.
Let's just ask the question. I'm sorry, Humble H. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
It's over there.
Brian's got it bouncing off containment and radiating stuff. I mean, what
no, that it creates radiative heat. The sun, because the sun does create radiative heat. So the radiative heat is created via the sun and the container.
Yeah, but there's not even proof that the sun is multi-directional like that.
No. Now I've listened to Brian again. He's correct, right? What he's saying is, in the same way you can't have gas pressure without a container, right? You can't have heat without a container. So he's saying you've got something that's the biggest entropy generator we know, the sun, right? And I think it's unreasonable to say you can't describe the heat as being radiated, because it seems to be the case, right? So I'll give him that. And then in terms of reflected off, I don't know about that, but certainly you've got to have the containment to be describing the heat, to be describing the temperature, right, Brian? So from that point of view, I'll take it back. I stand corrected.
If I used the term reflective, I don't remember using that, but if I did, I didn't mean to use that term. No,
that's the only bit
the sun is creating the radiative heat via the container.
Gotcha. Now you've clarified. I agree. Hold on, Owen. Now you've clarified. I agree. It's just
then there would be proximity to prove that.
The only word I took umbrage with was the reflected bit, when you said reflected off the container. What's the container? Is it reflective? And so on and so forth. But now we're both at agreement point, so we can move on, unless Arwin's got something to add. Go ahead, Arwin.
Well, the thing about it's always typically said, oh, it's radiative, but that suggests that it's actually has an origin point, because radiation, like any form, heat radiation, it's always like based on an object from which it radiates within Euclidean space. But that's not, there's no proof of that. You don't go, oh, we're going to the sun. Oh, we can literally measure the increase in radiative heat. No, you can't.
Okay, I agree.
At all. It's only we find it absorbed at ground level. That's where it is.
Okay, again, I hinted at that. Hold on a second. Humble H wants to get a word in this, right? It was his question. I hinted at that, Arwin, and you're right.
I'm sorry.
But the same token, when you're just having a discussion about this aspect of heat in general, which Brian's now clarified, I'm willing to accept that description just for ease, as opposed to we could, in every aspect of the sun, right, regardless of measuring angles, you can do this with every single aspect of it, even with the angles, because you get the same angles when you raise up in elevation. So, without exception, unless you can name one, there's going to be something about the sun that when you describe it in any way, someone can come along and go, I don't know if I agree with that. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. Totally.
Gentlemen, if I could?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Please, I'm just trying to get an understanding here, because I've been speaking to people, and I would say to them on this matter, you can't have gas pressure next to a vacuum. Maybe it's my understanding of the vacuum that Brian is talking about, but at the end of his presentation, I was left with the idea that there was containment, which we will discuss in a little bit if we can, containment, but inside of that container, there is something that can be described as a vacuum with gas pressure next to it. And that's my query.
No, definitely not.
No, it's not like that. No, hang on. Let me explain. Just give me a second. Let me explain. Because we have the sun, right, which it all starts with the sun and gas cycles, which are created by the sun, via the sun. That's the only reason we have a low-grade vacuum or pi, because it creates the gradient in the first place. Now, there is radiative heat that starts after 10 miles up, but 10 miles up is minus 51 degrees. You must research all the gases and look at what they do past that point and that temperature. And you must look at how much gases are actually even getting to that point. So you have this massive area above, right, that has a lot more vertical area than the gases, than the majority of gases work in. The majority of gases are below 75%, and I would say more. I would say maybe 85% of all gas is below cloud level. So you have this massive area above that of miles and miles and miles and miles for all this gas to spread out in. And then there is radiative heat that begins due to the sun creating a radiative heat. And what happens is you end up high where you have just basically hardly no gas, which creates the low-grade vacuum. But it's not just created all of a sudden. It's not like we have all this gas pressure and then a bit later we have 10 to the minus 17 torr. No, that wouldn't work. You couldn't have the 10 to the minus 17 torr without the chamber in the first place, or without the container in the first place. That's the problem. You can't have gas pressure and then this big vacuum of imaginable size, and that gas pressure not radiate into it and to the point where we don't have any gas pressure here. That's not how that works. Because we have a temperature gradient. It's about what the sun does and the temperatures it creates. That's why we end up with that. If we didn't have that, if we had one solid temperature throughout the whole thing, then we'd have gas filling the whole lot equally. That's what would happen. The only reason
but you can't have that. That implies a stop to entropy to have that circumstance, doesn't it? It's never going to happen.
Yeah. No, yeah.
But you can't prove that's actually caused by the sun because it rides with assumptions about it.
Correct.
But
hold on. We're never going to. Just let Alwyn make his point. Hold on. Alwyn's correct. Let him make his point because that's correct. Just say it once more because everyone's jumped all over you straight away, Alwyn. And you're right, and it's worth reiterating. That's why I stumbled around refuting Brian.
Right. So the idea of, well, this mystery, because it is a mystery that it is like the layers and the temperatures there are divided like they are, but you cannot prove that it is actually because of the sun, because you would have to have assumptions about the sun in order to lay that connection. And we don't have the evidence for it.
I don't have
it is
to have
actually in a
assumptions.
position.
All I have to know is that the sun creates the temperature.
Bad phrasing. Stop.
What's the sun?
It's not that the sun creates it. It's just that the temperature differential or the temperature increase or whatever you're describing with temperature does occur. Now, coincidentally, the sun's there when it happens, right? Yeah. So it's not a stretch. No. But that doesn't make Arwen wrong or you right when you directly tie it to the sun, when you don't necessarily know that's true. And I can't say it isn't true either. So this is a sticky wicket.
Hold on, there's a problem.
It's colder when nighttime. You know what I mean?
There's a problem. There's a problem in all this.
Let John go. John's been trying to get a word in for a while. Hold on, everyone else. Just let John have his moment. Go ahead, John.
How are we defining vacuum conceptually? Right? Are you saying a place where gas does not exist, or are you saying a differential in pressure? Because I don't think any of us are saying that a differential in pressure can exist within a dynamic system.
Correct. And NASA define it that way. So the vacuum starts at sea level, because what you are talking about is a difference in pressure. So how you clarify that difference is how they clarify and gradiate the vacuum from sea level up.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So do I have a wrong idea about a vacuum then? So would I be able to, because I'm saying, listening to everything that's gone on the debate so far, is that Nathan would use the term, we wouldn't be able to breathe.
Right. Well, the thing is, the question is, how do you have gas pressure without a container? Not how do you have gas pressure next to a vacuum?
Correct. I was going to summarize the whole discussion with that, but that's absolutely spot on.
So we can have gas pressure next to a vacuum as long as there is containment.
No, because of the way that the word vacuum has been defined, the vacuum defined by NASA on Earth starts at sea level. It's just how much gradation you've got up to 10 to the minus 17 torr in their description of what a vacuum actually is. So we're not saying that you can't have gas pressure next to a vacuum specifically for this reason. What you require to have gas pressure at all, and I can demonstrate that we do have gas pressure, and the antecedent consequent to have the pressure that we're breathing is a container. Therefore, the sky vacuum without containment description in the heliocentric model is void. It's a violation of natural law. In those circumstances, the gas we're breathing at high pressure would fill the available space. So if you imagine an actual vacuum chamber, which we'll ignore within the confines of my housekeeping question in this regard, or our housekeeping question in this regard. So ignore the fact that to have the vacuum in the demonstration, we've got to have a container around it. That's how we'd overcome it if someone else on the fundy side put this example to us, but I'm using it for educational purposes, so I'm allowed. So ignore the vacuum container. But inside this vacuum chamber, we're going to say that there's literally no gas. It's completely vacated. There is none. Very unusual circumstance. But at the bottom of it, we're going to put a, I don't know, skin flake sized item that's got containment. I.e. it's a tiny, teeny weeny little piece of fleck of skin sized item, and around it is a tiny, teeny weeny little container. Yeah? And inside it, there's a life form that relies upon having gas pressure to breathe. Right? You with me so far? Tiny little container in a big vacuum chamber. Right?
Yes.
What if that, let's say that inside the little tiny skin flake sized container, let's say you've got 100 gas particles bouncing around inside there. They're all bouncing around quite happily. The container's good enough to keep it within the confines of my example. When you get rid of the container, bearing in mind that inside the container there's 100 gas particles bouncing around off the walls and off each other, what happens when you remove the container?
That thing would die, I would think.
Well, it's more the fact that the gas, the 100 particles, just expand out in all directions and start bouncing off the walls of the next available container. Now, up until this point, I've said ignore the walls of the container, because what I'm suggesting in regards to this example isn't about them bouncing off the walls of the vacuum chamber. It's about the little organism I had inside this tiny little bubble that had 100 gas particles bouncing around for it to survive on. And the moment the containment's removed, they all disappear. Now let's compare that by scale to the heliocentric sphere Earth in a vacuum, and back away from it a couple of million miles, and go, check it out. That little dot, surrounded by this vast area, has got little life forms on it that lead these little particles of unbonded gas to stay in close proximity so they can breathe. In this example, I haven't even got a container to begin the example with for the organisms on this little dot in a vacuum to develop the gas pressure for me to make a comparable example when I remove the containment. Because in this example, the globe Earth example, the world would have never even developed gas pressure in the first place. Because the moment that example with a tiny little dot seen from a couple of million miles away in a claim to be Narnia land called outer space, you look back on it and the very first gas particle comes out of the ground and it just vanishes. It just carries on in whatever direction it's travelling at high speed away from its origin and never returns. Because it's never got anything to hit on and come back in the opposite direction. Because there's no containment in the heliocentric world. Ergo, we would have never developed gas pressure in the first place. I can't even come to terms with giving an example of how the gas we breathe would instantaneously vacate into the vacuum, because to give that example, I've got to start with Earth as a sphere with a container around it, which it hasn't even got in the model. So it's a ludicrous, absurd assertion, because we wouldn't ever have developed gas pressure. Make sense?
Yes. Listen, I want to believe I would even go further. I need to believe in what I refer to as the biblical model, because I believe in the Bible. I believe in that containment.
That's not for the show.
I just never thought. Sorry?
That's not for the show. I mean, you're entitled to your beliefs, but here this
no,
is a different standard.
I understand. I'm just making that point for a reason. I am not trying to fight against this. It's just now when I've been explaining things before, I've never thought that I would hear something described as a vacuum inside of that containment. And I thought that's what I was hearing. Yeah. So maybe my conception of what a vacuum is, or the definition of it, is wrong, because once that vacuum is there, those molecules in my mind would always push into that area. So to me, all the gas molecules in the container will be hitting the container.
Yeah, they will. Gas fills whatever space it's got. Yes, that's correct.
So what is the purpose of the vacuum? It's spoken of as a vacuum. This is what I'm having trouble understanding.
But you're not, after listening to the rest of the presentation, and as I said, I know more now than I did then. You're not understanding the rest of the presentation. How can, right? See, you have to understand, the majority of our air is below cloud level. Now, you could have clouds just 2 miles above, between 2 miles and 6 miles. You can have clouds, but most of the clouds are kind of 2 to 3 miles up for most places. The clouds will rise in the warmer temperatures because of the more warm rising air, and they'll be lower to the ground in the colder temperatures. But most air pressure is down here. So then you have this massive expanse that starts at 10 miles up, right? And it's minus 51 degrees at 10 miles up. We have to remember. So how much gas is getting past that? For the bit of gas that got past cloud level, how much gas is getting past 51 miles up? So what you end up with is a situation where you have more than double, right, the 10 miles. You have another 20 plus to 30 miles up above us, because that's all they can measure. They've never measured more than that. They never measured that and higher than that. That's all they can measure. So you have this huge area above it, right, with very little gas, right, that's radiating due to what the sun is doing with the ozone and bromine and other things. What it's doing, it's creating a gradient as it rises, even though the temperature is rising. But what's at the rising in temperature from minus 51 degrees? It's minus 51 to minus 50, to minus 49 degrees, to minus 48 degrees. You have to understand there is a rise in temperature to the point where you get to close on 30 miles up, and you're talking maybe plus 4, plus 5 degrees, depending on where you're measuring as well, depending on what part of the world you're measuring from, where your balloon is going up from. So what you end up with, at the top, you end up high with a low-grade vacuum. But a low-grade vacuum is just, as John pointed out, is still just a differential in pressure. Vacuum, an absolute vacuum is zero, but there's no such thing in reality as an absolute vacuum. The lowest vacuum we can create in reality is created by NASA in the Sandusky, Ohio vacuum chamber, and that's 10 to the minus 6, which would be magnitude lower than anything we'd have up high in the sky. And you cannot have a vacuum, but you can't even define a vacuum, or what a vacuum is, without having gas pressure. And you can't create a gas pressure gradient without temperature. You can't have any of those three things without a container. It can't be done. Okay. There's no point in pretending we don't have a low-grade vacuum in the sky, because we do.
By their definition of vacuum, yes, we've got less gas as it's dispersed up. Well, dispersion means it's thinning out. It's created at ground level where you find the highest concentrations. Therefore, the higher you go, the more it's dispersed into the available volume. Add to that cycles of heat and water and all the other stuff we've got going on, and you end up with a very complex system. It's dynamic in nature. So everything's always moving, it's always in flux. It doesn't alter the law of nature governing gas behavior. bases itself around the fact that gases aren't bonded to each other. They're not holding on to a sphere Earth. They have to be contained because they move at a high velocity in all directions. Therefore, if there's nothing to stop them when they go up, which they do, they're coming from ground level, then they just carry on indefinitely into whatever space they've got. And if the sky is a massive vacuum, aka a space for the gas to fill, then that's what gas will do. It'll fill it. However, if you've got containment, you can develop heat cycles and water cycles and dynamic systems like we experience. But all of them have the same prerequisite. They must start with containment. In order to develop a gas pressure gradient, you first have to have gas pressure. So you've got to have the gas pressing on something for it to then turn into a gas pressure gradient. It's first gas pressure, then gas pressure gradients.
Okay. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Right, because we've spent so long on this, we're not going to carry on housekeeping. We'll do a concise housekeeping tomorrow.
Oh, sorry.
Go on, Humble. Was there
Good
something
morning,
else you wanted
guys.
to add? Hold on, let's just round out because I don't want constant interruptions. What was the last thing you wanted to add, Humble?
Oh no, it may get a bit extensive if I go into the next point. So thanks very much for today.
Just keep
I
it
can only
under
do
your
like
hat
one-
till tomorrow or whatever. You know, it's just that we've spent a good
Okay.
20 minutes on this. That's all. And we're going to do a bit more.
Got you. Thank you.
No problem. Our pleasure.
Appreciate
Just
it.
pop yourself on mute for the now. Thank you. So
Okay.
we're gonna can you pop yourself on mute, Humble H? Thank you. So we're gonna cover the second part. We did the first part last week of Professor Dave Explains YouTube channels destroying flat Earth without using science part 2 : the stars. So this has been covered in the pre-show. So if you're a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, you can see this later on this afternoon after the show's been finished recording. Or if you're not, subscribe today to my second channel, Nathan Oakley. Although I did put these out over the weekend, so if you watched the main channel over the weekend, you will have actually caught what will be repeated tomorrow on my second channel. Just a weird set of circumstances where one of the videos didn't render correctly in the order I wanted it. But there we go, that's a different story. Anyway, we're now on to the part 2, and part 1 will come out on Tuesday. So for those of you who are subscribed to my second channel. But we're going to carry on with this. Hopefully everybody will participate a bit more, and I'm not as dominant as I was in the last couple because it was 90% me talking about this. So feel free to interrupt. I'll hopefully not bite your head off too much.
Is turning. Standing up north, whichever point in the sky is aligned with the rotational axis.
You'll need an R value for that rotational axis. Over to you, John.
Well, the rotational axis, is he talking about the stars? Because you need a flat plane for that rotational axis, if that's what he's talking about.
He is. He's just got a depiction of a little whatever coloured man on the top of his globe Earth CGI rendering, with gas not filling the availability of volume in violation of the second law of thermodynamics. Did you hear that, Dave? This diagram is a second law of thermodynamics violation. If this black area was surrounding what we are breathing, that's high pressure gas, then we'd all be dead because the high pressure gas would expand out in all directions to fill the availability of volume. Bearing in mind I've had a PhD over a barrel, that's PhD Clown Thunderfoot, when he came back with a rebuttal that gas behaves like bonded bouncy balls poured into a fish tank. No, they don't. Clown Thunderfoot, and I assume yourself, don't understand how gas behaves because you wouldn't be showing this diagram if you understood how gas behaves, because it's the second law of thermodynamics violation. That's why you'll never have any photos, because the photos would come from that area of space, coincidentally called space, a space that gas could fill in line with entropic law. Obviously, Dave's not an entropic law fan.
Well, what I was going to say is, if he has his depiction of a little man on Earth, of a globe, then there's no way to get the angle measurements from that surface. So he couldn't make that assertion to begin with.
Debunked every word of your last 2 sentences, Dave. Mainly because of the CGI image that you said your audience couldn't moan about. We are moaning about it though, eh? Because it's a violation of natural law and you can't get elevation angle measurements from this curved surface.
Would appear not to move, and everything else would rotate around it, just like we see.
Just like we see from the top of a globe surface with a man antipodal from that position down here at the bottom. Definitely not, Dave. That was your hemispherical assumption that we covered in the pre-show. Yeah, we don't live on hemispheres just because you say that when you talk about travelling south. When I travel south holding a compass, I just travel towards the horizon on a flat plane, And if I get lost, I can then use that flat plane I'm travelling across to measure the angles to the stars. Something you can't do on this CGI rendering, non-photograph, non-map, non-useful.
He also has a physical assumption bias concerning the stars. He's saying what the stars would do over a flat plane, as if he knows what they are.
In his straw man, that's correct, yes.
Standing in the
Sounds like he's
south,
affirming the consequence.
Let's see if you can formulate it, Chocolate. Go ahead.
Well, he said, like we see, right? So you're just assuming that you make a statement, you make a claim, and then he's certain that that claim is what we see because that's what we see. So therefore, claim is correct.
He's saying, if the Earth is a sphere, P, then we will observe antipodal rotation of the stars in the southern hemisphere, Q. We do observe antipodal, anti-clockwise star rotation in the southern, begging the question, hemisphere. Therefore, P, Earth is a sphere. So it's an affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy. Well spotted, Chocolate. That slipped me by.
same thing, but the opposite direction from their perspective.
Keep getting this mute button stuck. Damn you, mute button. Yeah, he's got this assumption about which way things turn, that when it was held up in a straw man false dichotomy, he didn't understand how just turning around would change your perspective of things, as he's described it here. But now he seems to understand it. Quite bizarre, really. Go on, was that John?
Well, I was just going to say, I didn't think he believed in perspective. He called it flirspective in the other video, didn't he?
I don't think so. Not that I can recall. Maybe I missed that.
Okay, maybe I might be stereotyping him. That's I'll retract that.
Well, he doesn't have perspective in his begging the question proof and nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator, but he hasn't used this in this example, so...
Also, any star that would require a line of sight that cuts through the Earth is not visible because we can't see through the Earth.
You also can't take an angle measurement to the ones you can see on a sphere Earth because angles require two straight lines meeting at a vertex. Notice you've got a straight line to this star, going through a chord point. So you've got a chord line drawn through a sphere Earth, and you're saying that because you can't take a chord line, well, even if this line between the point where you're claiming a physical geometric sphere edge horizon blocks your view, that'll be Earth curve. We've debunked that, by the way. Black Swan. Yeah, this claim is that the star is being blocked by a physical geometric limitation to this depiction man's view. So therefore, he's claiming Earth curve gets in the way. If the Earth was a sphere, as depicted in this CGI rendering, with a radius of 3959 miles, then every distance to the horizon measurement claimed to be blocking this star in this view could be no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, and we have shown beyond certitude that the horizon claimed to be blocking this star in this depiction is beyond the geometric limitations of an Earth sphere radius 3959 claimed to be blocking stars with its physical geometric horizon. It isn't. So we've debunked this claim. Your shitty straw man for how you think stars are precluded by way of a geometric limitation at the Earth curve edge horizon is debunked. We debunked it in 2020, Dave. So no, definitely not. Meanwhile, when you calculate how much you can see with perspective of a star, you can draw out, is it longitude lines from Polaris to give you the circles? I always get this confused. Latitude lines. There we go, got there in the end. So those latitude lines have come from Polaris and the angles thereof, which cannot be acquired from a spherical surface. So yeah, pointing out where Polaris disappears from view when you're measuring angles to it to give you maps, so you can convert them to spheres to then convert them back to flat maps. This is a really crap example.
That's why Southerners can't see Polaris and Northerners can't see the Southern Cross. But that's not all. Literally all observations of the sky from the Southern Hemisphere are utterly...
Hemisphere begging the question fallacy. So you've got a flat map that's actually a global projection. So, I mean, I'm going to say it's a failure as a flat map because it's come from a global projection. You've distorted it too much when you applied a Haversine formula to make it into a globe after measuring stars off a flat plane in the celestial sphere model. So this is a very distorted globe projection. And I'm going to assert that it only fails because it's a distorted globe projection. Ergo, the globe model fails after conversion from a flat plane. And the angles that this map does have a use for when you use it centrally out to the outside edge along those lines. So why are you drawing around it in this manner? Don't you know how this model works? This depiction with this red ring around it demonstrates admirably that it doesn't know how this model's used, how it functions, how an azimuthal equidistant projection is actually useful. Dave, you're a clown. Don't hold up these models when you don't really know what they are or what they're used for.
Inexplicable on the flat Earth.
Can I just
consider people stand?
Yeah, I will just add one thing before you do, Brian. On the flat Earth, no, this is a globe projection, Dave. You're telling us how this globe projection fails. Because it's a globe projection. That's what this is. And you're telling us how it fails when you reify it and put little men on it. The map is not the terrain. Look up literally the textbook definition of a reification fallacy. Hypothesization, if I could say it. Yeah? Making concrete that which is not. This isn't where you stand. It's a globe projection that you're telling the world how it fails. All right. Maybe you should get one that's globe-shaped. Oh, there aren't any. Because they don't work with angles. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. Actually, I'm going to point out just two things. One is that he made an assertion there earlier that you can't see Polaris from south of the equator and you can't see the Southern Cross north of the equator. That's a load of rubbish. You can see Polaris often from south of the equator, not maybe up to 120 miles south. You can't see it most of the time after that. People have said they've saw it more than that, but officially you can't see it up to about that distance past the equator. The Southern Cross you can see from the north. It can be seen from North Africa, the Philippines, Florida, Texas, all these places at certain times of the year. Because the Southern Cross, because I actually, when he had his debate with David Weiss, I had to go into the comments and correct them on several of his claims. One of them was to do with this. He doesn't know the difference between the Southern Cross and Sigma Octantis. He doesn't know the difference between the two. He keeps thinking that's the Southern Cross. It's not. Southern Cross points towards Sigma Octantis and it moves around it throughout the year. He doesn't know what he's talking about there. And the second point was on the AE map or the Gleason's map, that is half. Half of that is a flat Earth map. But it's the latitude and longitude grid is the flat Earth part, not where they place everything on that map, all the continents. That's not the flat Earth part of that map. That's the globe part that they've manipulated south of the equator to fit their globe. But the latitude and longitude grid, that's the flat Earth part. That's the part that's flat Earth. The other part is not. The other part is them south of the equator stretching things out and moving things around on an AE or Gleason's map, purely so when they decide to turn that flat latitude and longitude grid into a sphere, that all the continents like Australia and that will be the size they're supposed to be, as opposed to giving them their correct latitude and longitude positions south of the equator like they're supposed to do. But they didn't do that. They changed the latitude and longitude positions of all these places to fit the globe, as opposed to putting them where they should be, putting Australia where it should be, and it having the correct latitude and longitude position they should have. That's what they've done. And all that allowed them to shrink the oceans, if you understand what I mean. So
yeah,
it's nonsense.
I've been watching your videos. I know what you're talking about.
Thank you.
Standing towards the southern tips of South America, Africa, and Australia. They all can see the Southern Cross when they look south.
Has he demonstrated this? Because this came up in debate when I was out on the circuit before Flat Earth debate existed. And I vaguely remember challenging a guy who put this claim to me to actually show this observation. He claims this is the case, but when has it been shown?
So does my son.
This was the very thing he got wrong when he was on the debate with David Weiss. This is the thing, one of the things, one of like 3 or 4 things I corrected him on in the comments of that video. His claim is completely wrong, right? It's not the Southern Cross. It's supposed to be Sigma Octantis, where 3 observers, one in Australia, one in South America, and one in South Africa, are all looking at Sigma Octantis at the same time, right? at the same exact time, not their exact times as in their clock times, but the same exact time, they can all see Sigma Octantis. And that claim is a mathematical claim that came from the Globers back in 2015. There must have been a better quality of Glober back then, because they got their claim right. It's not, the whole claim is based around one particular time of the year. Because what he's forgetting about would be, because he's presuming that Sigma Octantis is the Southern Cross, because he doesn't know the difference. Right? What he doesn't realize is that there's going to be nighttime in one of those places, or one or two of those places at least. Right? They're going to have nighttime somewhere. It's only one particular time of the year. I think it's for 2 days or something like that, where mathematically on a globe within the heliocentric model, people standing in those three locations should be able to see Sigma Octantis at the same time. Right? Not clock time.
But has it been shown?
Time.
That was my original point.
No, it can't be. It can't be shown because it's purely a globe claim based around a globe and heliocentric model. That if we were on a globe and the heliocentric model was correct, then at this time of the year, for these 2 days, you would be able to see that. But nobody has ever shown it because it's not possible to be shown. And Anthony destroyed it years ago because he went and he contacted the observatory in Tasmania and other places, I think, and they have to take magnetic declination into account when
I was coming to that next. This is Anthony Riley, right?
Yes, Sleeping Warrior.
Yeah, so Sleeping Warrior covered this and went into great lengths to figure out where these positions were, what their magnetic declination was. He contacted loads of researchers and, like you say, observatories and various other different things. It's all coming back to me now. This is a complete sham of a claim. Like, complete nonsense.
Yeah, and he doesn't even have it right. If you asked him, I bet you he'd say it happens all the time. Not even knowing it's supposed to only be 2 days of the year. He keeps on claiming it's the Southern Cross. It's not the Southern Cross. The Southern Cross moves around Sigma Octantis. It points to what they call Sigma Octantis, something you can't see with the human eye if it's there. You know,
that's what Tony asked for, I think, was Sigma Octantis. Was it the Tasmanian Observatory contacted, I think, Nathan, weren't it? And
Brian knows more than I do. It's Brian reminding me that sparked my memory.
But they didn't have an image for him when he asked for.
No, that bit I do remember.
Yeah, see, it's what they've gotten into a bad habit. Dave is top of the list of this, of claiming the Southern Cross. And part of the reason they're claiming the Southern Cross, well, firstly, it's because they don't know their own claim, number one. Number two, they don't understand their own model and where the claim comes from. And number three is nobody can see Sigma Octantis with their eyes. I don't know if it can be seen with a telescope. I don't know if the thing is there at all, right? But I know that the Southern Cross is not part of the claim. Southern Cross has nothing to do with it. So any baller who's claiming the Southern Cross, especially Dave, who's supposed to be a professor, obviously doesn't know what they're talking about.
Okay, but let's summarise the purpose of the claim. The purpose of the claim is so he can beg the question of hemispheres. That's the only reason he's doing this. So he can assume antipodal positioning with these star observations. The fact that his assertion in the first instance isn't proven and there's therefore a baseless assertion fallacy doesn't alter the fact that that baseless assertion fallacy comes alongside a hemispherical begging the question fallacy. So it's absolutely riddled, Dave. Let's move on, though.
And two of them at a time can even see it simultaneously, depending on the time of night. Does that make any sense with...
Depending on the time of night? No, we just covered that, didn't we, eh? So, what, is this an all-year-round thing that's never been proven and never been demonstrated but claimed to be only working in a heliocentric world every couple of days of the year? No, I don't think so, Dave. We've never been shown this. I've challenged at least one person to actually provide me with the imagery, and Sleeping Warrior has gone to great lengths to actually back their claim for them and failed. So unless someone provides us with this, and it would have to be your claim, regardless of us pointing out that you don't understand the claim that heliocentrists make, and you think this happens, what, nightly? Various times of the night? No, you're just an idiot.
These folks all looking
Actually, Nathan, just to go there, because this is more about why that claim is all screwed up. It used to be 3 observers, one in South America, South Africa, and Australia, right? South Australia. We're all looking at the same point in the sky. Now, when it came to the Southern Cross, there was 2 observers. It doesn't matter. The 2 observers could observe the Southern Cross. like if you take in the angles to the Southern Cross and the times, depending on the time of year, two observers on a flat plane could totally observe the Southern Cross. If you take in the distances to the GP of any part of the Southern Cross, two observers would see it at some point of the year. One maybe South Africa, South America or something. Yeah, that could happen. Yeah.
Completely different directions. None whatsoever. Come to think of it, what does south even mean on a flat Earth?
Opposite of north? Out towards the horizon? Is this the lead into your begging the question hemispheric assumption being reiterated? Let's see.
It's totally nonsensical. But again, on a sphere, south actually means something. And
on a sphere, when you beg the question that south is antipodal from north, that's you begging the question fallacy. Saying that it means something on a sphere doesn't mean you've proven Earth's a sphere. It means you've begged the question of Earth being a sphere. You'll need a radius value. You'll need a measurable geometric obstruction to that star in the example earlier. We've debunked both. Further to that, the pictures, CGI, computer-generated images, the ones you said we couldn't moan about, are depicting Earth with atmosphere, that sphere-shaped air around a sphere-shaped Earth, sitting in violation of natural law, not dispersing into a 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum. Gas doesn't behave that way, Dave. It's not bonded to the ground. It expands in all directions to fill whatever volume it's got. And what do you know? This is a vast volume. Like, absolutely vast. Right? So this is nonsense. Your sphere Earth claim needs a geometric horizon, and it isn't possible in a sky vacuum. So it fails on every single front.
And all
Nathan,
these people...
Nathan, yeah, Adam, are you available for something here you and me talked about on this point?
I'm here. I've just got back in, so I was missing what was being said.
All right. You remember when you and I looked at the globe image where they showed the dingleberry and the equatorial plane, and they've got the equatorial plane east, west, north, and south. But on the sphere, north is up and south is at the bottom. And since the Nautical Almanac gets its origin of angles from the equatorial plane, that disk, they've got north at one end, south at the other, east and west to the sides. So go on, and then I'll comment.
Yeah. So as I remember, what when we do it on a flat Earth, there's no problem. The plane in which we're navigating and that we're going to apply the measurements to is fine, and they're also commensurate with the north, south, east, west direction. However, when you take your dingleberry and you create your flat surface at the center of a presupposed ball, the polar coordinates are no longer relevant. They no longer match. You have to work the two separately. They're not commensurate with each other anymore, because what was north, south, east, and west is just now orientated along the wrong axis. If you want to, because you've gone from a flat plane that you've imaginally created, and you put it at the center, and therefore the coordinates that work on a flat Earth and are commensurate with the map are no longer commensurate with the globe.
Correct. Do you see this in your mind's eye, Nathan? What he's saying?
Yeah.
So when you're holding a compass at sea, you're holding it horizontally, and it's pointing north, and behind that would be south. When you look at a dingleberry, it doesn't work that way. It's straight up.
Yeah, but you wouldn't be looking at
plot the polar coordinates on the north, south, east, west. It can't be plotted on the flat plane you're supposedly doing your calculations for navigation on at the center of your presupposed ball. You can't put the north, south, east, west on.
I see.
It only works on the disk.
That's just one more thing. So what you're saying is, when you take a tangent plane and transpose it down into the center of a presupposed spherical Earth, it's not just that the globe that was Dingleberry, now Globerger, is surplus to requirements. It actually makes the whole process impossible. Am I right?
Yeah, because instead of being on the XY axis, suddenly north and south come on the Z axis.
Right. Fascinating.
Devastating.
Yeah, completely. I mean, obviously, this is much higher level than we're taking apart from Dave the Dingleberry, because he's not putting these sorts of cutting-edge arguments to us in terms of transpositions of tangent plane Earth with the Dingleberry dangling between, and then the equatorial plane at the centre with you standing in the middle of a globe Earth in the core. He's not putting those sorts of arguments, but it's interesting just by virtue of him putting a sphere Earth up on the screen and having a star blocked by a horizon that we start talking about these things, right?
Well, when you consider that all navigation is done by the altitude azimuth coordinate system, altitude is your elevation angle above the deck. Azimuth is direction starting from north clockwise. So north would be horizontal, and then you'd go 90 and you'd have east. You go 180, you have south. 270, you have west. And in between, you would have north, west, and southwest, and so forth. But the whole point is the altitude azimuth coordinate system is the navigational system. And azimuth is direction. And that's on the disk, not straight up. It's so devastating, it's crazy.
It is. Well, with that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley 1980 premiering streams, is that right? Nathan Oakley or Nathan Oakley 1980 premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and all that good stuff. And another massive thank you to today's Discord and G Plus panels. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on an after show. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
Protractor of the celestial sphere. It's a celestial protractor. What they're actually doing at that point is not only putting north, south, east, and west at their equator line, but they're also at that point then they're claiming a curved radius, because the distance they're going to measure along that arc will be their measurement from the boat to the GP point. And that is the radius of a circle of equal altitude. So not only did they not have the use of a compass and compass degrees at that point, they also have a curved radius. So, and that's only the very first measurement. That's not even before you even make a circle. That's just the first measurement, and they have it all wrong from the very start. They can't use a compass, and they have a curved radius. Straight off.
I was curious as to him saying that south doesn't even have a definition on a flat Earth. Does it even mean anything? What does he think south means on the globe?
Antipodal.
Is he all right?
The equator, I think.
I hope he goes into defining that, I guess, because apparently it doesn't mean anything on a flat Earth. So I'd like to know what he thinks it means on the globe.
The problem is the elevation angle measurements show that it was always ascertained from a flat plane. And then through the use of the Haversine formula, they projected onto the surface of a globe. And that's where they invented spherical trigonometry to have that non-Euclidean math. Because everything in the nautical almanac is from this equatorial disk, which is a flat plane. So they get all the angles, they got circle of equal altitude on that flat plane, but they need to make it look like it's on the globe. So they project it through the Haversine to be two, and they use the North Pole as one of them, and the observer is the other, and the star's GP is the third, and they give a curved surface to it. So it all starts flat, and then they project it through, as John has put it, a transformative formula to make it a surface of a globe. Why do you have to do that?
Well, what they do is they actually take a real world measurement, which is the distance from the observer to the GP point of the star, and they create a circle out of that because they treat that as a radius line.
Mm-hmm.
So then they have a horizontal distance, which is a radius, which is they're turned into a radius line, and then a two-dimensional circle based off of that radius line, right? And they do that 2 more times, so they have 3 horizontal distances, that's 3 radii, and 3 circles based off of those radii. So they take all these real-world measurements and place them onto the universal transverse Mercator map, which distorts everything. Then they take them off of that and undistort them, and then add in their Haversine formula to try and put them all on the globe. But the problem is, in the real world, and 10th man, you have researched this more than anyone else here, and anyone on their side. In the real world, do the sailors do any of that stuff? Do they go and place circles of equal altitude onto globes that are too small for those circles?
No.
How can you use a circle of equal altitude where it can be bigger than the radius of your globe, bigger than your equator? You can't. They're all 2-dimensional. So how can you use that? You can't. Nobody does that in reality. So
No, they even,
yeah, go on.
No, they even go to the extent of covering it up by slick language by saying, well, the circle is so large at the point where the navigator is, can consider that section straight and give a 90 to the GP of the sun. And so they do this little mind game there to say you can't draw a circle that big. So what we do is we condense it, and then that one portion has to be a 90 degree to the GP. And so there it is, working as it would, exactly how it was ascertained off of a flat surface, because you can't get an elevation angle with a curved baseline. It's just this hocus pocus mind trickery that they've done. And it seems like, I don't know where Nathan is on the Professor Dave thing, but it seems like everything he did in part 1 and so far in part 2 is talk about the trickery part. Meaning, I don't know if I could put it in the right words, but it's been said, or people believe, or this is what flat earthers, it's never any proof. It's just hyperbole or some kind of language that none of us, even on this show, give any thought to, because we're looking for proofs. And so he's going by the indoctrination of what flat earthers supposedly believe, and he's attacking that indoctrination, which is not even what we're saying here. So it's just clever how they do it, because if the whole world is under the guise you live on a sphere, but there's never been any proof for it, and you go to show them there's never been any proof for it, and then you show the languages that are used to describe things that aren't even real or reality based, they get cognitive dissonance big time.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is, when the celestial navigator out at sea, when they measure 3 radii, which are 3 horizontal distances between them and the GP points of 3 celestial bodies, and create 3 circles of equal altitude of them, right? That gives them that pinpoints their location, especially if they're lost, right?
Yeah.
Right. So after that point, that's a real world thing that has happened. After that point, it doesn't matter what they decide to manipulate or do then, because without that, they would still be lost at sea. You can't do that on a curved surface.
No,
you can't do that on the globe. It's not big enough, and it's a globe.
I thought I answered it, but I'll answer it again. Hang on, Chaka. So circle of equal altitude. Anywhere on that circle, it's an equal altitude to the center, and it's described with a radius line. You have to show me a radius line that's curved, and you will never be able to do that. In fact, their radius from the center of their dingleberry to the surface is not curved. So you can't tell me that circle of equal altitude which is anywhere from the circle to the center is going to be the same. So if you got one guy on one end and another navigator on the other, they'll have, say, 50 degrees to that star. That will make that circle at equal altitude. There's a diameter line that links them both, or a radius from the center to each one. That is always straight. The argument dies right there.
Well, yeah, because they're using what they actually do is they're using chord lines through their sphere as radii. Because what they have to do is make the circles of equal altitude, because they're starting off with a curved radius line. They have to then make a circle based off of that curved along the arc, right, distance, make a circle that's smaller than the circle that it's supposed to be, right, and then actually use a straight radius line, which is just a chord line.
But then you got another problem. Hang on,
Yeah.
Chocolate. I know you want to get in. But then you got another problem, Brian, because then you got diverging zeniths, and that destroys it.
Yeah, but they can't do any of this from the start. The start, they have to use a flat plane to get their location. And they do after that doesn't mean anything. If they, as soon as they curve one of those radii, that's the end of that. It can't be done. Sorry, Chocolate. Yeah.
No, you're good. I was going to say real quick, when you say a curved radius, you should just call it a curved straight line, because that's what that would be.
Yep.
And that's retarded. But what I was going to say before is, I was laughing the other day. We were listening to one of these clowns, and he said something to the effect of spherical excess. And I was kind of laughing later on after that, because I was like, wait a minute. Don't they have a problem with that, Brian? Don't they have they don't have enough sphere for their sphere? How do they have spherical excess?
Well, as far as the circles of equal altitude go, they don't have enough surface area for for the circles of equal altitude to work, and they have a curve, so it's no good. But spherical excess is well, all that is, Chocolate, is 3 points from a center equatorial plane to the surface of the sphere, and based on the radius, then they just connect them up with curved lines. That's what when they say spherical excess, they're talking about what they claim to be a spherical triangle. You can't have a triangle with curved lines. You can create three vertexes, but they'll have curved lines. They won't be they won't be triangle. They won't all make up 180 degrees. It's total and utter nonsense, pure mathematical. If we were on a globe and this was real and we could do that, then this would happen. It's all that rubbish, isn't it? Spherical excess. It's just like, why is this excess thing? They don't have enough. They don't have, as you said, they don't have enough globe for reality.
That's what I was saying. I remember having this whole conversation about they don't got enough globe for their globe. How they got excess now? Like, are they retarded? It's crazy.
A bit to spare.
That's a spare.
A bit for later.
No, it's under the hood, Chocolate. The rest of the globe is under the hood. So where are we at, Nathan, on the part 2 of Professor Dave?
You want to carry on with it now?
Yeah, let's finish it. So then we only have one left tomorrow.
Celestial pole, so they can all see the same sky, no problem. Now, most flat earthers have heard all of this before, and instead of admitting to themselves that
So back to stereotyping fallacies. Most flat earthers have heard this all before, and now he's going to detail what most flat earthers do. I don't care about your irrefutable logic because I have unrelated talking points. Really? So, unrelated to your claims of a sphere Earth that's been converted from a flat plane, and how that flat plane's used to make the maps and models, you think they're unrelated talking points? Man, you really don't know flat earthers when you stereotype them, do you? Because I'm one.
the logic is airtight, they just ignore all of it and bring up unrelated, objectively incorrect talking points.
So objectively incorrect that navigation requires flat Earth elevation angle measurements and the maps and models have been derived from them. You think that's incorrect? Au contraire. That's the world you live in, you stupid clown. You're going to dispute how celestial navigation works? Because that's what we've been doing, talking about that. It's not unrelated talking points.
Nathan, He said the logic is sound. What's he referencing? Whose logic? Ours
He
or his?
he hasn't given any. He gave us a formal logical fallacy. Chocolate pointed it out in the live show. Affirming the consequence. He thinks affirming the consequence is logic. It's a logical fallacy. If P then Q, Q therefore P. No, mate, that's not sound. That's a fallacy. Keeps appealing to logical soundness when he offers up fallacy.
At least 1,000 times I've been asked why the stars don't change throughout the year. If
Have you? What did it have any relevance to this subject? Why the stars don't change their position throughout the year? They do. What's he babbling about? Is he just talking to people in mental institutions that don't ever look at the sky and then ask random questions about how they don't behave? What's he talking about? Anybody got a clue what he's babbling about? Is this some commonly known straw man stereotyping fallacy that I'm unaware of?
I'm not sure if
I know what he's talking about. I think he's talking about how we have cycles of stars and how they're not. Like, you know, within heliocentrism, they can't be cycles. That's what I think he's talking about. And now he's going to come up with some attack on us to try and mask over what the globe heliocentric model can produce.
I think Brian's on it because remember I said I called that navigation school and I ordered a book from them and they had where the stars were going to be from 2000 to 2050, and I said, how do you know that? And they chuckled and said, we know 2,000 years in the past and 2,000 years in the future, except it'd make a great big book, and so we just put 50 years of it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he was talking about the stars changing position or the fact that we have the same stars in the sky. But that's what he could be talking about.
But are we making a claim about it? I don't get it. He's positioning this like flat earthers have got a claim when it's him with a globe earth claim in terms of how they move in the heliocentric model.
Again, I'm thinking in advance. We haven't heard the rest, but I'm thinking in advance with all these tremendous speeds and movements throughout their made-up, universe. How is it that we see the same stars all the time in the same place? I think that's what he's linking it to.
Yeah, I don't think we put it as a claim, more as a question. But there's no claim to that.
Orbiting the sun. Well, they do. The star.
So orbiting, that's a begging the question fallacy. Begging the question fallacy number 2. Orbits. No, that's a presupposition you hold. You think the Earth is a sphere and that it's got rocks moving around it as it moves around other rocks and gases in sky vacuums in violations of natural law? No. Orbital mechanics is a begging the question fallacy. Not just assume orbits.
Stars that lie near the ecliptic are obscured half the year because they are on the other side of the sun, and we.
On the other side of the sun is your begging the question fallacy. Again, why are you assuming orbital motion and the consequences thereof? You haven't proven it. We've debunked it.
Can't see stars during the daytime because of how bright the sun is. These are the zodiac constellations, the ones from astrology, so it's shocking that you're not familiar with them since you're so in love with pseudoscience.
Astrology is the logic of the movement of the stars and the patterns in the sky. The fact that it's been linked incorrectly so to Mystic Meg and crystal balls. I mean, given that you were divining the thoughts of people 1,000 years ago in the last video, I don't really understand why you're knocking the logic of the stars as pseudoscience when it's been painted as pseudoscience by modern astrophysicists who are the actual purveyors of the pseudoscience. They're not claiming to be science. They're detailing the logic of the stars, or they were before it was hijacked and turned into woo-woo. Go ahead, Chocolate.
He's kind of knocking the fact that I guess he's been asked why we have the same stars in the sky. But then he refers to zodiac astrology, people who have been studying the sky and placing these stars where they are for all this time in history. So he's kind of like playing his own claim at that point.
Yeah, because like people who he will refer to, like Tycho Brahe, Johannes Kepler, Galileo Galilei, just to name the famous, and there was others, just the most well-known and famous. They all learned astronomy through astrology. They were all astrologers. Johannes Kepler was renowned for his birth charts that he used to do for people. Renowned for it. Like, this guy is trying to talk about astronomy as if it's science, while he's calling astrology pseudoscience, because astrology never claimed to be science, but astronomy is claiming to be science. And he's saying that we're in love with pseudoscience. The same guy doesn't do or have anything to do with any real science. He's not even a real professor. But this is what he does. He goes around just basically trying to character assassinate people and being smug, and then not having his facts correct.
But the title of the video series is How to Disprove Flat Earth Not Using Science.
What he's just projecting. What he's doing is saying, you guys are in love with pseudoscience. It's like, let's define a few of these terms. What is pseudoscience? Is he saying to his audience that we're in love with it? Pseudoscience is a claim of science where there has not been an application of the scientific method. That is what pseudoscience is. So when you say in a Timotei advert, here comes the science part, and they talk about what chemicals, for example, are used in the shampoo, that's not science. Science is systematic experimentation to establish the cause of a natural phenomena based on a hypothesis. That's science. That's the scientific method. Observe natural phenomena, formulate a prediction, vary your presumed cause of the effect you're studying and see if it causes it. That's the scientific method. If you haven't adhered to that method, then it's pseudoscience. If you've claimed it's science. Now, in the case of astrology, they've never claimed to be science as far as I'm aware. If you can show an example that contradicts that, then fine. However, he's stereotyping us with our love of pseudoscience. But astronomy is the one that claims to be science. You have people like Neil deGrasse Tyson saying science is right whether you like it or not, which is true. It's an empirical method if you've adhered to it. But he hasn't when he observes and declares lights in the sky. He is claiming to be science. Therefore, by definition, Tyson, and generally astronomy in general, is the pseudoscience of the sky. Because it doesn't have established cause and effect reasoning based on hypothesis and experimentation. That's science. So it is pseudoscience when you talk about astronomy. It isn't unless you can find an example of a specific astrologer saying this is a science.
The stars that can be viewed in a...
It's worse than that. 1 second, Nathan. Sorry, just before you go on. His title of his video is completely malformed. It says, debunking flat Earth without using science. Flat Earth would be a what is. The Earth is it's a what is question, not a cause and effect. Why would you even make that statement? Why would you even make a statement of cause and effect? It's a what is.
That's projection.
That's what I was thinking,
Remember,
Brian.
they used to
100%.
tell us all the time how they have signs for their globe. Oh, it's projection.
What these guys are laying out, just if you're listening in the audience and don't follow quite what's being said. So, science, when I said earlier, is the establishment of cause and effect based on a phenomena observed in nature. Let's just break that down a little bit. So, in order to perform the scientific method or to do science, natural science, what we deal with here, then the first step is to see something happening, a phenomena. So once you've got an observed phenomena, you can then query what you think might have caused it, suppose it, and vary it to see if it does. Right. Well, if your step one is why tree, for example, then tree is a concrete noun. Nothing's happening when you say tree. Same applies to globe or flat plane. You're never going to be putting why is Earth a flat plane through the scientific method, because Earth as a flat plane is a concrete noun. Same with the globe. It's not a phenomena to put through science. So when Dave titles his video, Destroying Flat Earth Without Using Science, it's like, you can't use science to prove a concrete noun, and you wouldn't be using science to disprove a concrete noun. Dave doesn't understand what science is. That's the conclusion.
Well said. I was thinking the same thing, Brian.
And he calls himself a professor.
direction closer to perpendicular to the ecliptic are seen throughout the year, and there's no logical basis for thinking that they wouldn't be. They're really far away.
Did he say perpendicular to the ecliptic?
He did, I think.
Would he not need a flat plane for that measurement?
Would that not be a measurement from his center, from the center of his globe?
Like
Where did that
Globeburger.
originate? Yeah, the globe. Where did that originate? That measurement.
Well, I would cite him as saying that you can't see through the Earth. So if he's talking about from the center of Earth, then you wouldn't be able to see the stars.
He really needs to get a grip on his own models and how they work.
Earth's orbital radius is negligible in comparison. But because of Earth's orbit, they do shift their positions slightly throughout the year.
So again, another affirming the consequent formological fallacy. Based on a begging the question fallacy of Earth being a sphere, we've debunked the R value, we've debunked the sphere edge horizon, we've debunked this cartoon being in a sky vacuum. None of this makes any sense, Dave. It's getting sad, it's getting tiring, because it's so
There's
useless.
that okey doke word again. Anytime these guys use that word negligible, they're trying to describe something that is supposed to be measured, but you can't really measure it. You can't really see it. It's always a trick every time they do it.
It's called stellar parallax.
Go on, John.
I was just going to say, Nathan, that's not fair for you to say that he doesn't understand his models, because if he did, he wouldn't be a glober.
No, that's true. If he understood how his models were derived and how they're utilised, both on the flat maps or the origins, the celestial sphere model, he'd appreciate that the in-between step when actually performing celestial navigation is surplus to requirements. It's not done or used. It could be, there's on page 87 of an example where you could put it through this very complicated maths of conversion to a tangent plane globe, dingleberry, and then conversion down into the equatorial plane at the centre of a Globeburger that you're not standing in. You could do those things, but you don't need to. You've just got a flat map and angles to measure.
I would link to my
stellar
parallax, yeah, go on.
Stellar parallax. That is invoking physical confirmation bias, because he's invoking that these things are physical and that they have what we would call a parallax. But parallax would involve something being physical, would it not? It would have to be physical to have parallax.
Yeah, I suppose so.
It is physical in his paradigm, though. But it's the fact that we don't want to deal with why there isn't the parallax. You know, I think that was the first bit he waffled with regards to, you know, I'm not sure of his words, but I think that at the beginning when you were saying what's he on about, that's what I think he was referring to, is why we're not seeing all of this parallax, the movement they're fixed in the way they appear to us, which is fine with us, but it is one of the biggest questions. One of the oldest critiques was known as parallax because of that. It's the most obvious thing. If these things are physical and orbiting around different things, there should be a differential in their appearance relative to each other.
Just negligible.
That was Rowbotham's namesake. He went under the writing name of Parallax, did he not?
Right, yeah.
Tutorial that explains what that is, but I know learning is not really your thing.
Right, personal attack based on our learning ability. You've given a dozen examples that needed a flat plane to develop into a straw man. You've yet to show us a globe model. You've held it up in false dichotomy and never shown it. You've shown CGI with Earth curve obstruction horizons debunked by the black swan, in sky vacuums debunked by natural law. But you're telling us that what? We're dumb? And we haven't looked up enough information? If you'd have done any research whatsoever, you'd realise you'd been proving a flat plane this entire demonstration with everything you presented. Because they all required angle measurements. You idiot! You can't get angles from a sphere surface.
Here it is anyway. Give it a look if you're feeling bold. So that's it. Once again, looking at the sky with your eyeballs is all you need to do to demonstrate that the
the Earth is measured flat with elevation angle measurements to all of the stars that can only take place on a flat plane, as opposed to Dave's affirming the consequent formal logical fallacies, begging the question fallacies, and claims that stand in violation of both natural law and the black swan debunking of the Earth curve horizon. So every single word in this video, bar none, has been debunked by us, Dave. Enjoy the aftertaste.
The Earth is a sphere.
No, it's definitely not. You wouldn't be able to get elevation angle measurements to Polaris to develop all these maps and models you use to strawman flat earthers with.
And once again, that's how the ancients figured out that the Earth is a sphere.
Because of the crystal ball by your groin that you're looking into to divine the thoughts of people 1,000 years ago who are figuring out, no, they'd have to be measuring a flat surface. That's how the world has progressed from then till now, and how the map's still used today. So what are you babbling about? They didn't figure out it was a sphere. It would be contrary to every measurement they'd ever take, ever, including the ones you presented today, Dave. So no, your crystal ball has led you astray yet again. You haven't managed to figure out 1,000 years ago, by way of divination of the people's thoughts, what the Earth was in its spherical nature, because it isn't. It wouldn't work with angles.
Without having a clue about literally anything else.
What, like you didn't have a clue about the maps and models you presented that were derived from flat planes and elevation angle measurements for all of the lines and circles on them? You'd think you'd have done a bit more research. But as we all know, Dave doesn't do any researchers. He gets people to do the research for him and then script it so he can read it off his screen.
They thought astrology was true, and that
astrology's just the logic of the movement of the stars if you ignore all the bullshit from the 20th and 21st century.
Demons are real, and yet they got...
So demons are real? What
Oh my
the
God.
holy hell?
Oh my
What?
God.
Excuse me, Dave? You think that as a flat earther I think demons are real?
Wow. Do flat earthers also eat babies? And this is ridiculous. I wanted to comment at the start of that ad hom tirade to say, look, just as Chocolate said, he didn't address. He hand-wave dismissed any issues he might have and might want to address for anyone with a reasonable question looking into this, and then just it descended into that.
And then he summarized it with just look in the sky with your eyeballs to prove the Earth is a sphere. That was his summary of this entire nonsense that we just listened to.
Down. If you can't manage that, you're allergic to thinking, and there.
Says the man who has all his research handed to him that he doesn't do himself. You're allergic to thinking? Did you think about where the latitude and longitude lines came from, Dave? Did you think about that? Did you think about how Polaris was measured to give you the equatorial plane that was converted into a globe to then give you that globe projection you laid out and told us how it didn't work? Well, it's projected from a globe. That's probably why it didn't work. After being converted by Haversine from a flat plane. But I mean, all the measurements and angles that are used for that flat plane converted by Haversine to a globe to then project on a failed model that you strawmanned us with. I mean, did you think about any of those things, Dave? Because this sounds very much like projection on your part. Like you haven't given any thought at all to the words that have just dribbled out of your mouth. And then you're telling your audience that they're not thinking if they don't agree with the scripted words you read. You complete mong.
There's no point in talking to you.
Oh, well, we're not talking to you, are you? We're reacting to you on your stupid video that was all wrong and proved the flat earth. So, no, I asked you if you'd talk to me and you refused. Was it because there was no point undergoing this humiliation of a flat earther correcting every piece of shite that you read off scripts that you didn't understand or research?
To everyone else, see you next time.
We will, Dave. There's another part that's coming tomorrow. We'll definitely see you again. We'll be looking at your smug, smiling face and debunking every dribbly word of nonsense that comes out of it. Go ahead.
You go, Brian. I'll go next.
I want to be very quick. Thank you, Terence. Very quick. I just want to point out that he's been invoking perspective throughout the whole of this, something that is impossible to happen on the globe model because they're matter orthographic. Perspective cannot and does not exist within their maths.
Right, they've got to deny it. They've got to call it flirspective and ridicule it. Because perspective, this cow is small, this cow is far away, doesn't exist in a globe earth world of orthographic view and feet and inches values that don't change in distance.
Yeah, I took that. I mean, out of nowhere, he says, you think demons are real. Well, That's not the topic we're talking about, number one, but I connected it to the Bible because what he's doing in a backhanded way is he's trashing the biblical geocentric view. So the Bible in Genesis gives a total geocentric view, not a heliocentric. And so now he has to throw demons, which the Bible talks about, that are spiritual beings. It has nothing to do with the creation of earth or what it is. And then he says something to the effect of, then if you don't get this message, then you must be allergic to thinking.
But it's interesting what he says about demons, because there is an offshoot of heliocentrism, this religion that he's a part of as a whole. He is part of a religion, that's heliocentrism. And an offshoot of heliocentrism is Scientology. And Scientology has Xenu and various other demons within the heliocentric model, because it is very much rooted in heliocentrism. It's an offshoot of it. So maybe he's talking about Scientologists and their demons.
Well, the point I'm trying to make is if he wants to have a talk on spiritual beings, yeah, the demons, angels, all that would fall under that. But we're talking about the nature of Earth, reality, and he's saying we don't need science. And he does this backhanded way of saying if you believe in flat Earth, geocentric biblical view, then that means you believe demons are real too. And there's no more talking to you, you crazy nut, because when we get your kids in college and universities, we then show the heliocentric model and trash the biblical viewpoint, and those kids give up their Christian faith. This is where he's going with all this.
Excellent.
Well, it's worse than that. Sorry, Neil, go on. I'll go after.
No, I was just saying, that's an excellent point. You're absolutely right. That's what he's doing.
Yeah, but it's worse than that because he's also shooting himself in the foot, because he would absolutely claim that the Big Bang is a real thing. He would absolutely claim that this is how all this started, and blah, 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 Big Bang, evolution, X, Y, Z. Where did the Big Bang come from? Right? Jesuit priest in Vatican, Georges Lemaitre, and it was around before him. He was just the first to, let's just say, bring it out there and hand it to Einstein and the rest of them. And does Georges Lemaitre believe that there is angels and demons? I have no doubt he does.
Brian, I think the Big Bang came from the show called The Gong Show.
Yeah, but I can't deny that. But let's be honest, Dave, if he was asked about the Big Bang, he'd be like, that's total science, not having a clue what he's talking about, and say blah, 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 blah. And without realizing that what he's actually promoting there comes directly from the Vatican, which I have no doubt believe in angels and demons, as they even do exorcisms. So, I mean, it just shows how he does zero learning.
It's a non sequitur. It has nothing to do with it, number one. Number two, this is the whole ploy of the devil, and I'll bring in the chief fallen angel himself, to take the creation, the glory of the creation of God, away from any human being who can just wake up one day as he gets older, through childhood, and sees the wonderment of everything and say, my goodness, God must have created this. There's so much designed to where I live and everything. And he wants to take that away and say, that didn't happen that way. It didn't happen from a creator. It happened because of an accident, a Big Bang. This is the whole point. And so he says, well, let me get into some false religious systems as well. So I'm not surprised the priests came up with a Big Bang, because they use some of the Bible when it suits them, and then they trash the rest of them when it doesn't, when they're needing money. Oh, give us money and we'll pray your relatives out of purgatory. Well, there's no such place. I mean, these people are nuts.
It's either what they did is corruption or bypassing. And if they can't corrupt something about it, then they make up another story alternative that completely is the opposite. That's how they do it. Either they corrupt it or they bypass it.
Sorry for stepping on Yarwin. I mean, look at the rest of his claims. And I'm not trying to make this into a spiritual talk around. I'm just pointing out, he talked about thousands of years ago. He told me the Greeks were just nihilists and just believed in nothing. I mean, the people that he's trying to claim, were the ones who knew it was a globe. these priests or these people like Galileo and all them. Like if they were astrologers, have no doubt they had a spiritual belief. Newton himself had a spiritual beliefs. Like the only people that don't have any spiritual beliefs is people like Dave. You know, that's it.
Right. No,
So
that's
he's
coming out.
making up shit about the
It's
past. He
he's
doesn't
attacking
understand
us.
anything.
He's also attacking Isaac Newton and God knows whoever else. Go on, sorry.
Right, but ignorant people always attack the past. Sometimes it is just their parents because they're just too dumb to understand what their parents have actually tried to accomplish, etc., etc. Well, the same goes for the fair past. So yeah, ignorant people mock the past. It's what they always end up doing every time.
I left. Can you
I
blame
left the-
people who think their ancestors are rocks? Can you blame them?
I left the Catholic cult. I mean, I was raised in it. I left it. And I left it before, and I didn't leave it for any other reason than I was going and I was getting nothing out of the services. I told my mom, I go, man, I know there's a God, but he's not in that building. And how does a kid at 12 years old figure out there's a God, but he's not in that building?
Right, it's like they make effort to keep God out of it, right?
No,
to
'cause
put
it's
this
just-
atmosphere there that so that you don't have it.
No, you're right.
Nah,
You're
it
absolutely
was
right
just
because they
weird.
want the. Well, go on, Chocolate.
I was just saying it was just weird being told that God's everywhere, he's in everybody, you can pray to him anytime. But then, but I gotta wake up early on a Sunday to go to this building because he's there at that time. What?
Well,
I gotta put on nice clothes to go to a building because God's there. But at night it's cool. I could just talk to him in my bed. That never made sense to me.
Don't forget to bring money.
And light a candle. Okay, but the whole point is control. They want control. They want to be, well, that's why they have a center figure called the Pope. Now he's supposed to be infallible. Now we know better than that. So most cults have a central figure that everyone follows. In the Catholicism, you have that figure, the Pope, which they're just men who sin a lot as well. But then they have doctor, and they jump between the two. Well, because I follow some Catholic sites who are against the current Pope, and they'll say, no, he's not following the Catholic doctrine. I said, well, then how can he be a Pope? How do you become a Pope? Because you say the Pope is infallible, so make up your mind. I mean, so it's amazing within their own structure, they have something that even the Pope has to stick to, but he doesn't. So the whole thing is a mess.
I mean,
The whole thing is a mess.
He's not supposed to be a pope. Jesuits aren't supposed to be popes. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, but they needed someone because it was shown that Ratzinger was part of the Nazi youth. So
Okay, but that still doesn't make it right that there is a Jesuit pope. It shouldn't be. That's like in their rules. They're breaking their own rules.
A Jesuit pope. He was called the Black Pope.
Yeah, but that's another matter, right? We're talking about official functions and its rules, and they're breaking their own rules. Literally. That's the crazy part.
But let's get back to Professor Dave. Professor Dave said, all you flat earthers and you believe in the evil spirits or whatever, right? Yeah. When the whole backbone of everything he's been talking about all comes from people who had that belief.
Exactly.
Isaac Newton even was very spiritual. Like, I don't know about Albert Einstein, but something tells me Albert Einstein didn't believe that it was all a big accident.
No, Einstein was actually a pretty dumbass atheist. He was not spiritual whatsoever.
Well, I don't know. I didn't know him, but just he didn't.
Well, it's been widely recorded that he had absolutely no interest in pretty much anything about math. He just didn't have the interest or even the abilities to communicate about it. He just didn't get it.
What's interesting is that
he didn't get anything spiritual, nothing. So he was a complete atheist.
What's interesting is that I could do it both ways where Dave can't. I could just use secular arguments and destroy the globe model, which we do every day on this show. Thank you, everybody. And not being a Christian, I could go to the Bible and show that it's a geocentric book and not heliocentric for those who accept the Bible. So I could do both, but Dave can't.
ballers pretty much can't do anything. They're totally stuck. They've lost. They should logically be in the know that they've lost, yet they are spending a lot of time and even skill ability to attempt to prevent themselves continually from catching on that they've actually lost. And that is their strategy. Their strategy is basically pure ignorance at this point and just manipulative distraction, starting with themselves, just to keep going. It's a crazy situation, has been for a while.
I feel like he's trying to change the story a little bit, or slipping in his little, all you need to do to prove a sphere is just look up in the sky with your eyeballs. Okay, I thought the whole story was you see boats going over a curve, and that's how you know it's a sphere. Which one is it? Or is it both now? You could just do the same thing.
It's whichever one you need it to be, Chocolate.
You like my thumbnail?
Yeah, it's funny. Demons.
Demons.
Nathan, I was going to suggest something else that you could add in, maybe once a week or something, as an extra to the show. Not an extra, but as a theme. You could take a video, something that one of us have made, or whoever, taboo conspiracy, and take the video. We could go through the video and say what you like and don't like about it, and then look at the comments and go through the comments, because there's a wealth of stupidity in those comments to be corrected. In the comments of, you go to one of Flatside's videos, and in the comments or Rachel's videos, there was no end of just.
Or your videos.
Oh yeah, well I didn't want to pre-promote me, but yeah, go to.
I don't mind doing your videos.
One.
You get. I've got to be honest, Brian. You do get a slightly more, not like overall, but just there are some more intelligent globe earthers that will come to your channel to discuss the matters with you. I have noticed that. I quite like entering into a bit of discussion in your comment section actually, because it does have slightly brighter people watching. Subscribe today if you're of a higher intelligence level to Brian's logic.
Let's do Brian's video on Wednesday, since tomorrow will end Professor Dave's.
Well, yeah, I mean it's only 8 minutes, and I'll shut up while you're critiquing it. But the comments are hilarious because, yeah, the things that these people are trying to come out with, to try and explain away something that has to be there for their belief to exist. It's phenomenal. I have commercial pilots, at least 2 commercial pilots in there, and other people who claim to be pilots, but they're not. But there is definitely 2 true confirmed commercial pilots in there who are talking absolute nonsense. So yeah, you could definitely get something out of it. You know, those kind of things. Once the video is not too long, but that video is only 8 minutes. But all you even need is a shorts video, even from someone like Flatside or something, and just going through the comments. You know, a lot of Rachel's videos are short. There's Taboo Conspiracy does videos as well, like good videos, and you see what's underneath. It's just the comments from these people and the misunderstanding. And you know, I had Wolfie, just to give a spoiler, Wolfie trying to claim the drag effect. You know what I mean? When I was pointing out that for a plane to get from London to Accra, Ghana, within 6.5 hours, has to travel over 6,200 miles to get to where Accra, Ghana will be on the globe, you know, 6.5 hours after the plane leaves Heathrow, London. You know, there's no way around it. Whereas Accra, Ghana is only 3,100 and something miles from London. But
what did he do?
Sorry?
What did he do to distract? Dressed up as a woman?
Who's that, Adam?
Wolf.
No,
Claimed the drag effect.
Oh yeah, the drag effect. Yeah.
That was my meme.
What's funny is I have Trevor Austin, another commercial pilot. Trevor Austin's actually a pretty smart fella. He's a lot smarter than Murphy. And he's not too bad of a fella, but he has a belief. But I have the 2 of them coming up with different reasons. Like, you're supposed to be commercial pilots. You should have the same thing. If it really is what you're saying it is, you should be able to prove these things, and it shouldn't be a problem. but you're coming up with different things to solve the problem. Then other people are coming in with other ideas, like the conservation of momentum, right? And
well, who's
all
the
these
safe pilot then, Brian?
Sorry?
Wolfie or this other guy? Well, only one of them knows what they're doing. Surely, if they're giving different reasons for stuff, surely if it's a different reason, you might have a different solution to accommodate for whatever that was. That Wolfie's dodgy, isn't he? I think that's Nathan called him. Just check.
What is the drag effect? Is that where things are drug around by the Earth as it spins? Is that what he was claiming the drag effect was?
No, it's purely to do with wind. Wind, crosswinds.
No,
Right,
it's
getting
which
it
I also
dragged
have
along
to-
with
okay, let's clear this up.
with
It's a lack of comprehension of what the globe actually claims and what Wolfie would need to therefore defend. So he's moved the globe Earth claim from the non-inertial turning reference frame of you observing things seem to drift into the inertial reference frame of the projectile you're observing if you're claiming a globe Earth proof with Coriolis. He does this all the time. He's thick. He thinks that Coriolis, that's the claim that is supposed to be proving Earth spinning, has anything to do with the actual trajectory of the items being observed. That would be his aeroplane. So obviously he's just a self-indulgent prick that thinks everything has to be associated with what he does. It's like, no, your plane might be used in a Coriolis example for how Earth's turning beneath it to seem like it's drifting. But that's seeming like it's drifting. It's got nothing to do with the actual trajectory. He keeps detailing the actual trajectory because he's got his hands on the yoke and thinks that therefore everything's revolving around him and his yoke because he's a self-absorbed prick. But he doesn't understand Coriolis, that's the bottom line. Otherwise, he'd understand that the effect is only detailed from a non-inertial turning reference frame. In the case of a globe Earth claim, that's from the ground. He just doesn't understand the effect. He's stupid.
So you're saying he doesn't have a device that basically negates the Coriolis deviation? As
Well,
he
the deviation would only be observable from the ground. So, no, he can't account for something that someone on the ground can see if you're claiming to prove a globe Earth with Coriolis effect. You'll be on a non-inertial turning reference frame, looking at something not attached, seeming to drift because you turn beneath. Well, if that's an aeroplane, so be it. But he's got nothing to do with the effect, even if he's got his hands on the yoke. Because if he moves the yoke, that's an actual movement. That's nothing to do with Coriolis. It's an illusion of an effect. Only observed as you turn beneath. He just doesn't understand the claim. He's stupid.
Yeah, because what I detailed in the video is an actual deviation, whereas Coriolis effect is an apparent deviation. It's an optical phenomenon for the observer. But what he would have to deal with in his plane under the globe Earth conditions is an actual deviation of not just direction, but an increase in distance. So there's two factors there. So besides, and we're not even talking about the curvature factor, but just to reach where Akragana is going to be, he would have to deviate his course and reach there within 6.5 hours. I didn't mention one time, on purpose, didn't mention anything about the Coriolis effect because my video has nothing to do with it. And I didn't mention anything about the conservation of momentum because my video has nothing to do with it. Their claim, right, that they're at these days is that you'll see no deviation east to west because of the conservation of momentum, and they won't even define whether it's linear or angular. It has to be angular, which means it won't work because conservation of angular momentum means you have to be attached to the thing that's rotating, right? But they're in an airplane, so no. So they try and throw in linear now and again. They think they can get away with it with someone who doesn't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But the point is that go on, Nathan.
I was going to say, meanwhile, the claim from the globe Earth is that there's Coriolis effect. Anybody who's in this argument, or external to the argument for that matter, will be familiar with that term associated with the globe Earth proof of spin. That's the claim. Coriolis effect is what's supposed to be proving Earth spins. That's you turning beneath a plane, looking at it look like it curves. It's a sight gag, as QE describes it. So it looks like it's curving because you turn beneath, according to the globe claim. That would shorten the flight times. So what do? Start justifying how they do or don't account for the Coriolis effect? It's an illusion, you dumbo. As I keep saying, Wolfie just doesn't understand the globe's claim. Keeps detailing what the projectile does. The projectile's got
Well,
sod all to do with an apparent deviation we're supposed to see as we turn beneath on a turning Earth and don't see. So he's got to get into justifying why we don't see it.
That's the
Wait,
problem.
you guys
hang
don't
on,
know
Chocolate.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's one of those. That's the problem with Wolfie. If you got your hands on the yoke, it explains why you're scrambled about Coriolis.
What's been
I was
good?
waiting for it.
You see why you have to interrupt now, Chocolate, you don't you?
Yeah, and I give it up willingly because that was dope.
Thank you, Chocolate.
Sorry,
What's
Brian,
interesting about what this is that, and I thought this would happen, is they keep on talking about how there's no deviation east to west. They won't give in on that because they know that means flights from North Carolina to Los Angeles will be way shorter, right? So they keep on arguing against that, and they keep on talking about a north to south and a south to north deviation. Now, I didn't bring any of that into it. I just showed what would happen if a plane was flying from London north to Akragana south, and what would have to happen. And now they're claiming there's no deviation south to north, north to south.
Well, welcome to Flat Earth, because the globe claims there's Coriolis effect. That's a not actual deflection observed from the ground. So the moment they say, well, there's no deflection, regardless of which direction they're claiming, so there's no Coriolis effect. So Earth as a turning sphere is debunked.
There is one glober who will gladly come here and tell us about how flights from west to east are actually shorter than east to west. And a walk. Shout out to you, clown, because apparently you don't know which direction your globe is supposed to be spinning in. So yeah.
Planar walk is one of the dumbest anti-flat earthers I've ever come across, so not surprised.
Well, when they claim there's no Coriolis east to west, how are the stars deviating east to west? I don't.
Precisely. Tied up directly to their primary claim is the star movement. That's Coriolis effect. Earth turning beneath the stars to cause the not actual deflection of the stars at 15 degrees an hour. That's what the globe claims. So the moment they start saying no deflection, so the stars have stopped. Oh, well, that's caused by Earth turning beneath them. What Coriolis effect? The thing you're fighting against?
Nah, just because these things have the same cause doesn't mean, they're doing the same thing. Just you're getting hung up on details, guys.
That's what they claim. Coriolis effect. We all know they claim it. It doesn't happen. There are no examples of Earth turning beneath anything to cause not actual deflection. It just doesn't happen. So when you point out that it doesn't happen, they start defending why it doesn't happen instead of realising that their claims failed.
Can I make a shout out to all the globers who have for years and years and years have defended the fact that it doesn't happen and will actually go out of their way to show us how it's not happening and then even tell us why would we expect to see this thing happening? Shout out to you guys.
Well, like Simon Dan, you and your reference frames have been ruined. That's Dan explaining why we don't see drift, even though the globe claims there's 15 degrees an hour of it. He's saying, look, here's a man jumping up and down on a trampoline, not drifting at 15 degrees an hour, therefore no drift. Therefore, reference frames used to claim drift are ruined. I don't claim them. You do, you dumbo. Simon Dan's a perfect example of that guy who's literally making apologetics for why the globe claim fails. There's no drift. Here's why there's no drift. Man bouncing on trampoline without drift. Look, no drift. So no 15 degrees an hour proof of Earth spin then, Dan, dumbo.
But the stars moving prove Earth's turning.
Only if you've got a presuppositional non-inertial turning Earth, you'll need an R value for that.
But I can't say that there's no Coriolis and Coriolis at the same time. That wouldn't make sense.
As a glober, no, you can't leave yourself in a paradox in your model, Arwin, where you say there's Coriolis effect, the stars are turning because Earth turns beneath them, causing the not actual deflection known as Coriolis, but simultaneously the football and the bullet, which are claimed to have Earth turning underneath them to cause the same not actual deflection, actually don't deflect. Here's why. No, that doesn't work at all. Either it deflects because Earth's a turning reference frame, or it doesn't because it isn't, and it doesn't. Therefore, we don't need to hear anti-flat earthers justifying why we don't see the claim 15 degrees an hour of drift the globe's supposed to have. We just don't see it. Therefore, we haven't got it. Therefore, it's not Coriolis effect. So inferring that that effect is directly consequential when you look at the stars is wrong. Further to that, you'd need an axis to rotate about if you're claiming the ground's turning, in violation of the flights that aren't being shortened and anything else drifting when we don't observe it, and the anti-flat earthers' justification for why we're not seeing it. So it's a complete cluster screw that we absolutely annihilate on a basically daily basis when we ask the housekeeping question. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety? They don't have any. They debunk their own claims every single time. It's pathetic.
This is where listening to Chocolate tell his stories of his coworkers. If you listen closely, what Chocolate is doing is he's giving them their own claims, which they don't understand because they're ballers, but don't know why they're ballers, other than the fact that it's been indoctrinated since youth, right? Kindergarten up to whatever age he sees them at his work. And then they'll say, I don't believe that. And Chocolate said, but this is your claim. It cracks me up every time he does that.
Yeah, it's like you just told me you believe you live on a ball. Well, those that gave you that little fairy tale, this is the claim they make. So it's like you don't have a choice. You kind of have to believe this. Sorry, I know it sounds stupid, as you've just told me, but yeah, you're kind of forced to believe it. Otherwise, you're a heretic, and that's cool by me because I'm one too. Because I don't believe in magical ball stories anymore.
Well, you can't be a heretic, Chocolate. You're no longer part of that religion.
This is true, yes.
Yeah, and when you show them the Tesla in the vacuum of space, what did they say to you when they see that picture?
Nah, that's not what we say. That's not real. That's what the Globers I've presented it to, and I've presented it to plenty.
Oh, that was probably one of my favorite days of being a flat earther, when I got told by dozens of Globers that that's not real. Well, yeah, it was on the front of the newspaper. Oh, it's great.
It was great because at the end of it, when you finally got them to recognise that it was their positive claim and it is genuinely asserting to be real, at that point, you can then, point out to them how nonsensical their worldview is and how little evidence they've actually got to back it.
Oh, trust me, I do.
The thing about the globe model is that everybody would love to believe in it, but once you start to realize the actual consequences, it just gives you a headache. So the Globers, if they want to be actual Globers, not anti-flat earthers, just don't think about it too much.
And you have no idea how right you are, especially with that phrase. Oh, this is giving me a headache. Do you know how many times I've heard that in trying to describe their claims to them?
They gave me a headache in the past. These kind of things.
Chocolate. I was at a trivia night on Friday night. A friend requested that I join, so I went there. And the bartender, we started talking, and the friend of mine who was there also is a flat earther, another friend, and said, hey, why don't you talk to her about it? So just met her. We're sitting there, and I brought up just a couple of points. This would give me a headache. I can't deal with this right now. I go, it's your claim. Why is it giving you a headache?
So what I just told you, you believe in is giving you a headache.
Yeah.
But you just told me I'm silly for not believing in what you believe in. Oh, okay. You think that works out?
So I said, I recognize the cognitive dissonance hitting hard. I said, look, next trivia night, you said you had a course in physics. Let's talk about physics, and we'll just keep it to one subject. And she nodded her head. She said, okay.
Yeah.
Nathan, I just posted, I just posted 2 comments, one from each commercial pilot into the mass debater if you want to show them.
Yeah, it's on. One from Trevor Austin. Is that the first one?
Yeah, do you want me to read them out?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, Trevor, who is a commercial pilot and much smarter than Wolfie, says, you've also, just because he's made a lot of comments, there's a new one. You've also got the out rotation in the wrong direction. 6 people liked it. That means 6 people agreed with him. I don't have it in the wrong direction. Not that it would matter as it doesn't exist. It's west-east. That's the globe's direction. You obviously don't account for it, Trevor. You don't even know what way it's supposed to go, LOL.
I saw this
If he's
comment.
accounting, yeah. If he's accounting for it, then he'd have to know what direction it's even going in. But he didn't even know that.
Hold up. He's a pilot, a
Yeah.
globe Earth pilot who believes in the globe and is arguing with you, and he doesn't know which direction his globe is supposed to be rotating.
That's correct. I would rather
Yeah.
labour on the fact that Brian's point is absolutely on point. Because what he's saying is, if this was a concern, if this was a real issue, it would be drilled into them regularly and ticked off on training sheets so that they absolutely knew what way it was turning. If it was in any way consequential. But it isn't. To the point where he can get it wrong and Brian can correct him on it. That's how inconsequential it is. And that's the point that
Right.
Brian laboured on. I would have laboured on the same, Brian. Well done.
He can get it wrong and still not get fired.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if he doesn't know which way Earth's turning because it's totally inconsequential. It isn't. That's what Brian's pointing out.
Yeah, if it was something that they had to deal with. Sorry, Chuck.
And that's why I brought up Planet Walk before when he came here years ago and did that, because he was going through these examples of how flights were supposed to be like, he obviously understood that the point is flights or the flight times would be shortened depending on which way they're flying. But he was continuously telling us about how flights from the west to the east would be shortened. And I'm like, wait a minute. You're not getting it because your globe is supposed to be rotating west to east. If that's the case, flying east to west is going to be shorter. But he didn't even get that. Like it's insane, man. These people don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Sounds like classic Coriolis confusion.
Yeah, they don't understand their own claim. In the first instance, Wolfie's a textbook example of that. He doesn't understand his own claim. Right, I've got Wolfie's comment up. Go ahead.
Okay. This is one of, I don't know how many comments Wolfie's after making. And I just want to point out something. You'll see it when you go through the video in a few days' time to see what Wolfie does. He has Wolfie's alternative account. He starts making when things start getting tricky for him, he starts using his alternative account simply because, he can always claim that it's not really his or something, that kind of way, because he knows he's going to have to make stupid claims. But here he is, another comment made from his main account. I don't know how many he made off the main account, a good few. Here's another one, Brian. What is the drag formula? What are the variables in that formula? Do you think aircraft are frictionless through air? This is 100% relevant to how aircraft adjust for Coriolis. But you won't touch it because it easily defeats your incorrect claims. I would have so much fun and debate on these topics with you. The only option you had was to run. So there's Wolfie with his drag formula and Coriolis, something that had nothing to do with the video.
Isn't the drag formula D plus WIG equals TV?
If it is, it still doesn't explain how that supports Wolfie's point.
Yeah, it's to do with wind. It's crosswinds and stuff. The drag formula. That's what that's about.
It's right next to the optical illusion meter.
Yeah, it's about.
What I mean by that?
How they bank. Go on, sorry.
If they do have to deal with drag as a consequence of Coriolis, that would mean that the Earth and the wind is rotating in its reference rate, and they'd have to deal with the supposed 1,000-mile-an-hour wind, wouldn't they? Otherwise, it's in the same reference frame as the wind, and it's just flying.
And debunking Coriolis effect. Because if there's only one reference frame, then there isn't a separate non-inertial turning reference frame of Earth to cause the deflection in the stars, is there? If there's only one. Like you and your reference frames are ruined?
The point I'm making is if you're dealing with Coriolis effect, yeah, then you're either in a separate reference frame to everything, which means they've got their lockstep air, but that's moving also 1,000 plus miles an hour at the equator, plus any wind speed, plus your directional speed. Think of those forces, or they're not dealing with it.
And if they are, what you end up with Q's just the best at this. He'll get someone to run along that affirmation process, right? To get for them to get around the fact there's no deflection, but some deflection. But obviously it's conserving the momentum of the ground that's coming beneath it. All right, okay. So you're on the equator and you're travelling from west to east. What's going to happen? And they end up detailing how the plane will literally take off from the runway and end up flying backwards. They will detail that to us.
Yep.
The descent into absurdity because of the claims. As the more and more they try to explain it, you get to that final point, don't you? Where, yeah, if this plane just stays on the equator, technically it's flying 400 mile an hour backwards. Which,
I mean, these real world effects, right? I mean, where would we be if we didn't find out that hurricanes actually move in a straight line 100%?
Okay, let's break that down as well. So Kosho came along and told us that with a basic understanding and a reasoning in line with the Coriolis deflection, that would be to say that as you observe winds, because you're turning beneath them on a turning Earth, in line with the claim of Coriolis effect, you'll observe the winds looking like, appearing but not actually, curving. So satellite imagery, for example, notwithstanding that the satellites aren't in a sky vacuum, would suggest that they just move in a circle, like actual deflection. Like that's how wind behaves. I mean, on a smaller scale, you can look at tornadoes, but nevertheless, based on the understanding that to have a Coriolis effect on a globe Earth that's turning, you need to be moving underneath the thing you're observing and declare that it's only looking like it's curving because you're moving underneath it. Well, with that in mind, Kosho then declares, yeah, that's exactly what we're observing in the wind, Coriolis effect, because he's seen wiki entries where they say Coriolis effect is somehow connected to actual deflections of winds. But then when you break that down, what Kosho's actually asserting is that the wind is actually moving in a straight line. And you're only observing it seem to take a curved path because Earth's turning beneath it. Now, further to him, me exampling how he's saying that, he did actually say that. Yes, the wind is travelling in a straight line, only appearing to curve because Earth's turning beneath it. He actually said it.
I've put both those audio clips in Master B if you want, both Kosho and Danny T with planes flying backwards, since we're on Coriolis right now.
No.
What's up,
That's
man?
chocolate. The chocolate. What were you talking about? Which argument or what you said you destroyed me?
Correct me if I'm wrong.
What were we talking
Correct me if
about?
I'm wrong, Kosho. But you once declared that the rotating hurricanes were actually going in a straight line. They just appeared to rotate because we were on a rotating reference frame.
It's 100% true that the winds are going in a straight line.
And
there's no reason for them to travel.
I wasn't lying,
There's no
guys.
reason for them to travel in a circle on their own. So the Earth is rotating. But when they start off their travel, they're going north or south, depending on. So the high pressures are going to go towards the south.
Say winds all go in straight line.
Were actually going in a straight line. They just appeared to rotate because we were on a rotating reference frame.
It's 100% true that the winds are going in a straight line.
so does that mean then, on a really windy day, the Earth's spinning faster?
Yeah, the surface winds debunk that claim. That's right, because suddenly you've got a surface wind keeping up with the globe Earth at 1,000 miles an hour and exceeding it. So what you've got 1,000 and what's a fast wind? 30 miles an hour? 1,030 mile an hour wind on the equator to compensate for the deflection that they're saying is occurring. You're like, this is absurd. Yeah, surface winds debunk the claim. Correct, Adam.
But let's remember the context, right? He said that because I asked him why are these hurricanes depicted from the inertial reference frame up above from your supposed satellites that would be in the inertial reference frame, why are they depicted as rotating from there when you're telling us that they 100% move in a straight line, and the only reason they're rotating is because we're on the Earth that's rotating?
Right, the other one's planes flying backwards. Let's see this.
This is Danny T. Truther, 1 November 2019, 24/7 2.0 Discord.
I agree that projectiles are a pretty bad example of Coriolis because there just wouldn't be.
There is no
a
Coriolis
significant
effect
of an example. But what about ones where they do it with like fluids? Like what
There is no Coriolis effect.
Were you talking about your flushing your toilet,
okay,
Danny?
Wait a second. You
not
defined
the
it.
toilet. Not the toilet.
No, I didn't say the
not-
toilet. Hold on a second. Do I got to put you on mute again?
Do it.
You already defined the Coriolis effect correctly. Well, kudos to you. You're the first baller that you must have been listening to the Nathan Oakley Hangouts for a while, so you got it. So if that be the case, see, my argument isn't the Coriolis effect. My argument is the Coriolis causes, right? If the Coriolis causes are true, then a flight from North Carolina, Charlotte, to LA on the same latitude line, roughly, traveling at 500 miles per hour would take 1.5 hours straight flight. Why does it take 4.5?
That's a good point.
Am I on mute still?
No.
Okay. So when the airplane lifts off from the runway, it's let's say lifts off going 500 miles per hour, which it doesn't, but
let's say let's say, hold on a second. Let's say the runway is facing west.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Exactly. Even simpler. Yeah. Okay. So if the Earth were spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, and
860. I'm sorry.
Right.
Sorry for interrupting you. At that latitude, it's 860 miles an hour.
So at 860, so then it would be going 1,360.
No, wouldn't.
In a reference frame with respect to the Earth, in a reference frame that was outside of Earth.
Wait a
which
second.
no
The
one lives in.
plane. Hold on a second. Takeoff speed is about 175 miles an hour. So the Earth is spinning from west to east at 860 miles an hour.
Right.
Right. Are you saying the plane is going backwards?
Well, not on Earth. No.
When it takes off? If it was
No.
conserving momentum, right?
Right. Yeah. If it was conserving
I got
momentum.
you by the balls.
No. You're right. You're actually right. If you're conserving momentum
the ball,
and you were at a stationary point in space, which nobody is at,
no,
then yeah, you would see the airplane and the Earth passing you by, and the airplane's actually going. Yeah.
Go ahead, say it.
That would be correct.
If it was
No.
conserving momentum, right?
Right. Yeah. If it was conserving
I got
momentum.
you by the balls.
No. You're right. You're actually right. If you're conserving momentum
the ball,
and you were at a stationary point in space, which nobody is at,
no,
then yeah, you would see the airplane and the Earth passing you by, and the airplane's actually going
backwards.
Yeah.
Go ahead, say it.
That would be correct.
Say it.
Well, it's no different. Okay. Can I give you an example? I know this is if I'm in a car.
No. We're on my example. Say it. If the person is standing, if the person is in the the inertial reference frame. Hold on. I'm gonna have to fucking mute you. So, the Earth is spinning from west to east at 860 miles an hour. The plane is taking off directly west to its target in LA, and it's going 175 miles an hour. If it's conserving momentum, are you telling me the person in the inertial reference frame is seeing the plane going backwards?
Yes.
Ah!
That's right. I know that, but you know that's the answer, though.
Danny,
Are you
you're not thinking
recording?
about
Are you
reality.
recording?
Yeah. Beam me up, Scotty.
So are
Beam me
you
up, Danny.
still
Oh my gosh.
struggling?
Okay, I think we've got the general
That was
idea.
great.
Right. So from the inertial reference frame, if you're looking down, if you were observing from a position above the ground, then you're in the inertial reference frame. And according to him, the plane takes off, and the differential speed means that the ground is turning faster than the plane is travelling. Ergo, from the inertial reference frame, the plane's going backwards. That's what he said. He even clarified it. These people are nutters.
What an idiot!
It's as you hear him processing it, and to respect to him, he did admit it, but you can hear the pain as he processes it. And the implication. Oh no!
Well, the funny thing is that if he was talking to loyal globe believers, then he could say that and blow their minds, like, yeah, and because they would go with it. But because he is facing flat earthers, he now realizes that we wouldn't be tricked by it. That's why he refused to say it.
Yeah, he couldn't even say it. Yeah, from the inertial reference frame with the difference I've described and the Coriolis deflection, conservation of angular momentum, even though I don't understand what that would mean. Then from the inertial reference frame, the plane's flying. Oh shit! Oh shit!
With conservation of momentum, it goes, doesn't he? And at that point, you can see him calculating it and doing the maths, can't you, in his head? And that's when it dawns on him that it is going backwards.
He wouldn't say it though. He just kept saying, "You're right, you're right," but he won't say it though.
Because it's ludicrous. To say it is to admit verbally how stupid it all sounds. Yeah, the plane's flying backwards if you're watching it from the sky, with respect to the ground. So it's never reaching its destination then, you stupid idiot. The destination's getting further away as it takes off the ground. Oh, stupid idiot. No, Earth's just not turning. And when you claim it is, that's the kind of shit nonsense you end up declaring because of it.
No, he has. Look, the planes have to actually fly backwards, otherwise they'd arrive at their destination too fast.
That's what was so precious about the clip with Kosho, because the first time he said that to me, we weren't somewhere where we were being recorded, and like there are people who didn't even believe that he said that to me. I don't remember who was in that call, where the hell I was, but he said that, and I was like, nobody I know heard this. So when he came back here and you got him to say it again, it was fantastic, because I couldn't believe he said that shit.
It's only because I don't pay enough attention. So when you said that, I wouldn't have got details on the fact that it was in a hangout and, no one was recording and, I just trust you. So the moment you said it, I was like, that happened. Because I know it happened. You told me it happened. Therefore, I'm not going to assume in any way, shape or form that you're mistrustworthy. You're not. So I'm just going to take that as read. Right? Chocolate said that's what he said. So when I held him to task with absolute confidence that he did definitely say it. Because you heard him. You don't make stuff up. So therefore, I'm going to hold him to task and just get him to say it again with the confidence he has said it once, and he'll squirm if he doesn't want to, because that's what people do when you're there on the panel having heard him say it once. He's either going to squirm or reaffirm it.
Yep.
I thought he's proudly sharing his knowledge with us. The way it wasn't squirmy. He thinks he's right. He actually believes that that's plausible.
What a joke.
Well, they don't mind being laughed at as long as they're allowed to believe that Earth has an axis and a radius and can be a non-inertial turning reference frame. As long as they can get those things out, they're okay with whatever nonsense comes after.
But it is nonsense. Hold on, John. That is correct. But it's one of the few circumstances where in anti-flat Earth, this isn't necessarily true for just a normal globe believer, but for an anti-flat earther, the further they go in their journey of quote-unquote discovery, the dumber they sound. Literally, it's like you're doing more research, you're digging up more information about how the globe Earth works to expand your knowledge. But the more you do it, and the more you try and justify your belief in this religion of a globe Earth, the stupider you sound. Therefore, we can only surmise that the dumber you're becoming.
Well, that's reasonable to say. It's a very weird flat Earth religion, heliocentrism.
Yeah,
I like how
you
put that.
That's a very well phrased. Yeah, it's a very weird flat Earth religion. Is heliocentrism?
Yep, I am your father.
Indeed. With that perfect note to end the show on, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G Plus panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, hitting the thanks button, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.